Hello. All right, let's get everyone in. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. And you?
Not too bad. After the day off, Monday is great.
All
Hi, Vera.
right.
How are you, Vera? Oh, she's.
I don't think she's listening yet. There you go. It's down. So yeah, what a weekend. Does anyone here from Santa Barbara? Do you guys go to Solstice?
No, I
To
didn't.
the Solstice Parade?
No, I didn't. I live in Ventura, so.
In Ventura.
Yeah.
So the Solstice Parade always goes up State Street, and for the last 2 years, of course, because of COVID, it's been. So this year it went up. Santa Barbara Street, and it's quite different. I mean, I have always enjoyed participating in it, like doing the art, creating stuff, but it's been quite a few years that we're always gone at this time. So I haven't, so this time I just sat there and watched and thinking I was going to be in Argentina, and in the end I'm not. But it was good. It was good, different, much smaller than normal, of course, because of the restrictions, but yeah, had fun. If you ever consider coming down for to Santa Barbara, so come down and watch the Solstice Parade. It's all arts and funky, something you don't see anywhere else outside of maybe Mardi Gras, but it's not even like Mardi Gras. So okay, I see. Hi, Shayna or Shina.
Hello.
How should I
Shayna's
pronounce
good.
it? Shayna. Okay. Hi, Vera. So this big early sign on, at 8:45 is meant in specifically to catch people up who haven't done this before. And since both Saul and Vera have been in my classes before, I'm going to focus for a little bit just on Shayna to find out how I can get you up to speed. Have you ever taken a Zoom computer class before?
I've done Zoom once or twice, never a class though.
Okay,
so no.
Good. So let me explain a few class things. So this is nothing to do with Illustrator yet. Right now, it's how we gonna work with the Zoom. And the first thing is that there's a little chat icon. So if you look at all the icons on the bottom of your screen, one says chat, and I'm gonna go ahead and write hi in there. So now everyone saw where you see hi showing up. Go please and give a little hi of your own. So everyone, when your class starts, that's one of the things I want you guys to get going and doing. Hi, Grace. Let me see.
Hi there.
Oh, there you go. Nice to meet you. So Grace and Shayna, you're both people who I have not met yet. So Grace,
I've taken classes from you before. I've taken Photoshop and.
But here online on Zoom?
Yeah, I think it wasn't last year, maybe the year before. And
the year before.
One time in class before COVID.
Got it. Okay, great. No, your name sounded familiar, but I thought I hadn't seen you online. But if it's been a few years, that's good. Then you probably remember some of the things that have to do with how to handle Zoom. So I'm going to go ahead and keep explaining and hope everyone follows through. The first one is to go to the chat and give a little aloha. You don't need to say, in fact, even who's there. If you want to, you can, but notice that it says your name after you write it. It says Shayna said hello or Saul said hello. Like, are you guys seeing that? So all I really need is you to appear on the chat, because that helps me later with attendance. Now the chat is also a place where you can ask questions. If I'm in the middle of like saying something or doing something and you have questions that are a bit unrelated and you want me to know. So it's not like you can ask me in the moment because I'm talking about something else. Then the chat is a perfect place to go and write in a question. And then when I have a minute, I look down and answer that question. The thing is that when you write it, make sure to send it to everyone. like you can send it to just me. And if you're going to say, hey, I have a headache, I need to step out, that's just to me. So you can send it to Deanna. But if not, send it to everyone so that the class knows what the question is. That way, when I answer the question, everyone knows what question I'm answering. So you can use the chat in that way. That said, if the question lingers for a while, other people are welcome to say, hey, there's a question in the chat, because sometimes I'm not like focusing on the chat. But the other way to speak up or talk to me is to just speak up. And notice that if there's no, ow, I'm sorry, last night I got like 8 mosquito bites and I'm scratching everywhere by the side of my neck and the back of my neck. They just seem to have attacked me on my neck. So if you see me scratching like a dog, I'm sorry. I'm just like, I have a really hard time. There's this mosquito that drove me crazy. So I'm noticing, I'm like, rang, rang, rang. It's going to happen. Sorry. All right. I apologize for that. If you need to speak to me and you're on Zoom, so like Zoom is the main program, like right now, all you have in front of you is Zoom. It's very simple to just give a quick opening and closing of your audio by just holding down the space bar. Just hold down the space bar and you can say something and then let go of the space bar and then you're back muted. So give that a try. Hold down the space bar, say something.
Hello, hello.
And then when you let go, you're back to being muted, which is really cool. So everyone try that one. I'm not sure. I haven't said that one in a while. The thing is that most of the time what'll be in the forefront will be Illustrator, because that's what we're going to be working with. And so then if you try that, it doesn't work and people are surprised. And it's well, because Zoom will kind of fall into the background program and we'll be working with Illustrator. In that case, when you need to speak, you need to unmute yourself. Now, if there's no noise in the back of your house, you're welcome to stay unmuted. But if you have, dogs, people, trucks, things like that, because you might be on, sometimes people are in the car, then stay muted until you need to speak. All right, so that's just the sound part of it. The next part of it is when I ask, I'm looking to see, hold on, I'm looking at the roster. I'm seeing one other person that I don't know. I hope she shows up. 2 people I don't know. Because I don't want to say this 20 times, but I guess I will. All right. If I need to, I need to. So the next thing is the reactions button. So on the bottom bar of the video, you see that there's a reactions button, the little smiley emoji. I use that one a lot. Now we're going to be a very small group. This is the smallest class I've ever taught, just so you know, and I'm amazed that they allowed it to go and didn't cancel it, because usually I'm not to pat my back, but I will pat my back. I'm the kind of teacher that gets a very full class, but this class got rescheduled, weird things happened, and suddenly I lost a bunch of the people. And anyway, I'm glad they didn't cancel it. But still, sometimes I need an answer from everyone. So even if the everyone is only, a total of 10 people when everyone does show up, so it's going to be tiny. Where I need a group response. So when you click on the reactions button, the group response buttons are usually going to be, there's only 3 of them. The green check mark, when I say green or yes, that's the green one. When I say no or red, that's the X. And then sometimes you need to raise your hand. Now, the reason I use those 3 is because those 3 stay up for as long as I need them to stay up. All the rest are really cute if you want to laugh at a joke or whatever, applause, or, I guess there's no down thumb. You can only say yay. What if you want to say no yay? I don't know that you can do that. So those are great, but they only last 3 seconds or less, 2 or 3 seconds, and then they go away. So when I want to ask the room things like, are you on a Mac or are you on a PC? I need the other buttons, okay? So everyone, if you're on a Mac, give me a green check mark. And if you are on a PC or Windows machine, give me a red mark. So let's try that one out. All right. So when I ask these questions, I actually need everyone to answer. There's going to be a lot of time, but I'm just progressing with the thing and I'll go, okay, If everything's good, give me a yes. If someone needs support, if it's not working, just give me a no. And then when I'm done with the thing, I go back and I help people who have a no, right? And but just so, but that way it stays on and I see who needs a hand. Now, if you click on the same one again, it turns off. So like if I didn't say yet, turn it off because I'm trying to see who's on a PC and who on a Mac, don't turn it off. So can you all, again, Mac is green, PC is red, and keep it on because then I get a gander at what's happening in the whole class. Okay. So now if you, Saul, yours keeps turning off. So I think you're clicking on it twice. So can you click on it one more time and leave it on? And Grace, I don't see yours. So if you have a minute to, you have a minute, if you can reach over to your emoticons and say either green or red for PC or Mac. Now, this is kind of what I want to avoid, to have to remind people to press it all the time. Just when I ask you to press it, leave it on until I'll clear it when I don't need it anymore. Does that make sense? Do you need help finding it, Grace? Hello, Grace?
I'm driving. So
Oh, got it. Well, that's good to know. See, then I know not to ask. Oh, I think you had emailed. Had you emailed me about that? Yeah, no, there's someone else who said that they'd be driving and they'd be in on their phones today. The first day, people who've taken the class might, I told them it's okay to kind of, because I'll be going through some beginner stuff and some people just want to keep getting better and they've already taken a couple of my other classes and then they don't need to take the whole setup class. Okay. Thank you for letting me know, Grace, because then I don't keep insisting, right? All right. The next thing I need you to do is raise your hands if necessary. I will ask you to raise your hands, and when you raise your hands, notice that your video goes to the front, to the top left, and actually, Saul, that's an applause, and the applause is going to disappear in 2 seconds. A little clap. So yeah, raising your hand stays, and then I'll answer in the order of people raising their hands. And so like I would answer Shayna first and so next, because that's the order in which you raised your hands. So and then when you're done speaking, you can either lower your own hand, or if you forget, I can lower it. And sometimes no one lowers it. And then I look back and I go, hey, was that the same question as before? Do you have a new question? Right. So those are things that will happen all across. Okay, good. So you all know how to handle those. The next thing would be that I need your name and your last name in the video bit that's there, because that's what I use for attendance later. I get to see who's attended, and there might be, I doubt there's going to be 2 Shaynas, but still roster wise, you know, the other day there I had 2 Sarahs, which is a bit more logical to have 2 Sarahs, but still it's easier, it's, you know, for the to keep track of who's here officially. I have to fill out big rosters, and I need to know what your last name is. And the first name can be whatever you want to be called. So since you're driving, Grace, I'll go ahead and change yours for you, and I'll add your last name. Hartel. There we go. So everyone else, perfect. Great. That's the Zoom part of it. Well, no, there's one more Zoom part of it. 2 more. I forget that there's all these basic Zoom things that some of you guys totally know. So hang for a second. When you share, when we're working with Illustrator and you get stuck, sometimes you ask me and I just answer, and that helps you get unstuck. But other times, hold on a second, let me turn my fan on. It's really hot here. Okay. Other times, oh, here comes the other person who's new. Okay. So, okay, but at other times, the only solution for you is to share your screen so I can see where you're at, so that I can help you. Okay. So, hi, Lyric or Lyric, how should I pronounce your name?
That's pronounced Lyric.
Lyric?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Hi, Lyric. Nice to meet you. So I'm just helping people catch up to the things that we need to do on Zoom. So just a quick question. Have you taken a class on Zoom before?
Yeah. I have.
Okay. A computer class on Zoom before?
I've taken like a lot of college classes on Zoom. But
College, but
yeah.
computer ones where you need to use your computer, like learning a computer program. And the reason I ask it's a bit different, you guys, because the part I'm about to explain is, and that's kind of just when you dropped in, I was about to say, when I'm explaining something and you get stuck, right? Because it's a hands-on class. I don't just lecture and you watch. You are going to be doing this right next to me. So when I'm doing something and you're doing it, you're going to have two challenges. One is that you're going to have the same screen kind of split in two. One part of it with me showing you what to do, and the other part with your own program. And we're going to talk now about which version of Illustrator and what you do and how to get it and all that. But right now, we're going to get to the place where you're going to have Illustrator that you're working on. So the first and easiest solution is, if in your house, like you might notice that Vera appears 2 times here, Vera Dietrich, if you see, there's 2 names for her here, because she's done this before. And if you have 2, perchance, laptops, 2 monitors, an iPad and a computer, something like that, like I have a computer with 2 monitors, that's the easiest way to attend a computer class, because then you watch my stuff on one and then you do the stuff on the other. So say you have a TV that you can connect to your computer, or what I have done is I've gone to the thrift store and bought a cheap monitor and connected it to my laptop, right? So anyway, those are all ideas that I can give you for as you proceed to take computer classes. It really helps to have 2 screens. But if that's not what happens, then what you need to do is you need to split your screen. So imagine right now that I don't know if you have Illustrator, any of you guys have Illustrator yet, but if you do, then when you open your program, just right now, you can open any window, a Finder window, put it to one side, and then put your Zoom to the other side. Okay, so especially it becomes tricky when I share my screen. So I'm going to share my screen right now. Okay, so it doesn't matter what I'm sharing. It's just the fact that I'm when I share my screen, it kind of tends to want to take over your screen. Okay, so what typically happens is that my screen, whatever I'm sharing right now, fills your screen, and that's not going to work because then you don't have space to do the work on your own. So if your computer screen just got filled up, the first thing you need to do is hit your escape key on your keyboard. So go to the top left key on your keyboard and hit the escape key. That kind of disconnects Zoom from its edges, but nothing much changes. It's up to you to now grab with your mouse, go grab that edge of your screen and click and drag when your mouse gets double arrowed, and just make it much smaller. So see, and then now things are going to redraw for me. And then you can put me and my share to half the screen. And then whatever you do now, then kind of the memory stays with Zoom. It knows to just go and fill only half your screen with me. And that should leave the other half of your screen free for you now to open your own application. So we're going to be opening, for example, a browser to get to the handouts and stuff like that. So you should be able to see both at the same time. So did that work for you? Okay, so any questions? I know that Grace is driving right now, but she's done this before. So basically right now, Grace said, Shayna said, yes. Lyric, how is that going? Did it work for you?
Yeah, it's good.
All right, good. Now I'm going to stop that share. The next question is, and again, we're using the reactions to answer Lyric. So the little emoticons, if you have Illustrator, you have a Creative Cloud subscription of your own, give me a yes. If you do not have Illustrator, give me a no. And that would be yes is the green and no is the red. Okay. All right. So Shayna, do you have a Creative Cloud subscription or an older version of Illustrator or what?
I have the new version, yes.
The new version.
I did intro to graphic design just last semester.
Oh, perfect. Lyric, do you have the app? No. Okay, there we go. I see. No. Grace, I don't remember if you have it or not, but I know you're driving, so you can speak your answer whenever you're not going to crash, whenever you have a minute and stop, let me know. All right, one more thing, Lyric, I forgot to say. When you sign in, can you go to the chat and just say hi, hello, I'm here, something like that, into the chat. So again, that helps attendance later when I go and find out who is here, who is not here. All right, so people who do not have it, like Saul already knows, there's two options. You can either purchase it for very cheap. The student price is either $40 for 6 months or $80 for a whole year for that subscription. Or if you don't want to purchase it because you're just trying to figure out if it's something you want, then you can use VDI, which is a way to access from your computer, you access the school computers and the school applications. Okay. So I know, for example, that Saul is on VDI. Before I explain either or, Lyric, do you know if you're going to be wanting to purchase it? I can show you that. If not, I'll show you how to use VDI. What do you think you're going to want to do?
I'd rather just use VDI for now.
Okay. Do you know how to use VDI?
No.
Okay. All right. So here's what I'm about to show right now is, hold on. I have, tomorrow I'm going to be out of power and I'm teaching. So I'm testing, setting up, I'm going to, someone let me an iPad, and I set it up here to see if I can figure out how to teach from an iPad for tomorrow, which is going to be interesting. But I set it up covering half my screen, so I was trying to see it. All right, so let me share my screen with you. And what we need to do to get connected to VDI. Now, VDI is as if you were actually going to, so ideally, VDI is going to be something you'll do on, open a browser, any browser. And ideally, I use Firefox. It's one of the most stable ones for VDI, or Google. You can also use Safari or Edge, but Firefox or Google are a bit more stable with VDI. So go ahead and write vmview.sbcc.edu. So I'm going to put that in the chat. Okay. There you go. So I put in the entire code, and in fact I'll put the actual link there if you want to just click on that link that I just put in the chat, and it'll take you to this page. Now, since right now the Shayna doesn't need it and Saul and Vera know how to get this, and Grace is driving, Lyric, so I'm just going to address myself to you, and if you get a question or whatever, speak up immediately, because this part is just for you. Okay, so are you here on this page, Lyric?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're going to be using this, all the time, then you're better off at some point, and let's not do it right now, clicking on here and downloading the VMware Horizon client, and then just connecting from there. It's much more stable, but you can do that after class. So for today, I didn't mean to do that. I clicked for that meaning to click. Now today we're going to use this one, which is just stay on the web. So click on this side, HTML client, and it'll take you to your City College login. So go ahead and log in, and once you've logged in, you should be seeing this page. Let me know when you're on this page.
Yeah, I'm on it.
Okay, good. So you would have only student instead of student employee. Click on student. This one takes a while. This one is a button that will take a little while. It'll go dark and at some point it'll open up and we'll have a Windows computer, which is as if we had just driven to school, popped into a computer lab and opened their computer. And I really need y'all to get that that's how it is, because none of your files are going to be here. It's going to be absolutely like if you're on the school's computer, where everything there only is savable on the computer. Anything that you save might be wiped out by the next person who comes, or at the end of the day, the lab gets cleaned out, so you don't have your stuff anymore. So anything that we do in VDI has to be done and saved to your Google Drive, the Pipeline School Google Pipeline Drive. And so I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute, but this takes its time. So the total sign into the VDI process takes like maybe a minute and a half by the time you're done. So please be sure to have yourself all signed up to VDI before class opens. And that way you have VDI signed in, Google Drive signed in, and Illustrator open and ready to go in future classes. Now, there you go. Finally, it popped up. And so as you can see, I'm popping into a, remind me again, Lyric, did you say you were PC or Mac?
Mac.
Mac. Okay. So yay, it's actually easier because people who are on a Mac, suddenly you see a Windows computer, you know that this is the school computer. People who are on Windows and open another Windows computer can get a bit confusing as to which one is their Windows computer and which one is not. But for I'm a Mac person too. It's much easier because you're clearly in a foreign environment. And so this is clearly the VDI. And now we're going to wait a little bit until a few more things need to settle. It takes a while, and see how a thing called sign into Google Drive should be appearing. Once that appears, you should also see down here at the bottom right your name or your username appearing, and then it's finally set and ready to go. So when all of it has popped in, we're going to then go ahead and sign in to Google Drive. So click on sign in with browser. Did that show up for you yet? Hi, Peggy. Nice to see you. So Lyric, did the sign in to Google Drive appear for you yet?
Yes, I'm signed in.
All right. So here you need to use the entire email address. So it's username at pipeline.sbcc.edu. Okay. That last thing I put in there. Okay. Hold on. Because I immediately start using my Mac shortcuts on a PC, and I have to remind myself for a second that I'm on VDI. All right. So now they'll say next. And then over here, it'll have, I think the first time you do it, it has another question. And then when you say okay or yes to it, then you click sign in down here. I'm having there we go. All right. So once it says that you're signed into Google Drive, you can close this window, and let's do that. Let's close that window. And now you should be ready to go, because the class files will be on Google Drive. And over here, it'll say Google Drive is loading your files, and you should say okay to that, and life is good. All right. So for those of you who are on VDI, the class files will be right there, ready to go. They're all set up. For those of you who have your own computer application, and I tend to call this, which is weird, but it just is how it comes out. I say those of you who are home, well, you're all home, or maybe at work or in your cars, but I tend to say if you're at home or at school, and I mean, your own computer applications versus the VDI school applications. Why? Because those who are at home have to download them into their own computers. So today we're going to skip that. We're not going to download class files yet. We'll do that at the beginning of next week, because today we're going to be using Illustrator just from scratch ourselves. And then I'll send you the instructions for how to download the files, and we'll have them ready to go for next class. So right now we're going to be using Illustrator, and I'm thinking normally I use Bridge, which is another application. I think that I won't be using it for this Illustrator class because I have a different set of projects set up. So here on the left side of the screen where you see the Windows Start button, click on that, and then scroll up here through the A's until you see Adobe Illustrator. So if you need to scroll up or down, and click on Adobe Illustrator 2021. And let's get Illustrator opened up. And the rest of when this opens up, for everyone else who's already used it, you'll just go straight in. But for Lyric, if you've never used this and you're on VDI, you're also going to have to sign in. And it probably, once you go into Illustrator, so first it needs to open up, it'll have you sign into the Creative Cloud. And so again, when that one shows up, you need to put in your entire pipeline username at pipeline.sbcc.edu. Email address, and that hit next, and then you should be able to use Illustrator. Okay, so all right, so now we have Illustrator open. That whole process, as I said, takes like a minute and a half between signing into Google and whatever. So by the time class starts, we should be here. I'm looking to see, it's 9:15. I believe, as I said, 9:15 is when I said everyone else should join us. Was it 9:15 or 9:30? No, it was 8:40. I think I said 9:15 in the email. So let me look at this. Vera, so Lisa won't make it today, and Liz won't make it today. So I'm just missing 2 people. I was mentioning that this is the smallest class I've ever had, which means we're gonna do really well. You guys are gonna get a lot of attention from me. And yeah, the whole changing schedule really messed it up, and I lost a bunch of students who now couldn't make it, but some of you guys did. Shayna and Lyric, thank you for transferring. But of the 10 students that I had, you're the only 2 who transferred. So the schedule really messed things up. So I'm glad they didn't cancel the class, and we're ready to go. So is Illustrator opened up, and did you sign into the cloud already, Lyric?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Great. Now don't want you to feel focused on, it's just that everyone else is ready and set up or have their own applications. But now, just like everyone else, I'll stop asking you specifically. I will only ask people specifically, just so no one feels like I'm putting you on the spot when I know this is something that is relevant to just one person. For the most part, you're welcome to speak up or not when you need to, and not feel like I'm targeting you. I know that when I have to speak to one person, it feels like everyone's just sitting there, but this was quick. We're all ready to go. Now, the Illustrator application, when it opens up for the first time, comes in as this floating window. I recommend, since we have a small screen anyway, and then you have me, whatever, to maximize it. So if you're accustomed to Mac applications, we do that on the left, but on the right for the Windows, we're going to go to these 3 little buttons that are here. Let's click on the one in the middle that maximizes the screen and just fills your screen. That's the best way to go. Now, this is an example. I just used Illustrator a few days ago with the final Illustrator class that finished the last week with my final Illustrator class. And so what happens is when you use Illustrator and it's your own, you'll see here a lot of icons that represent the files that you've last been using, right? So for you guys who have your own applications, you'll see here the jobs that you did before, and you can click on it and open it up straight from there. But this is an example of the school wipes clean their memories. And so I've lost anything I've had before. So there's no history. So just open it up as if this were new. Okay, so that's why when you're on VDI, you can't save anything to the computer or it'll disappear because the school wipes the servers out all the time. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start by creating new over here. And then on the Mac, I think it says create, it doesn't say create new, it says something else when you first open the application. I have a Mac, so on the side, I have the Mac always running for myself. So if there's anything that's a little bit different, I'll point it out. If there's only one or two things that are a bit different. Okay, so on the Mac, it'll say new file and it'll be a blue button. On the PC, it says create new, minor differences. So let's go ahead and hit create new. Oh, I forgot one really important thing. I need to know experience level. So I do know from everyone else, but I do not know. Shayna, you said that you just took a graphic design class, right? So
Yes.
you used Illustrator, but when you take those classes, they don't really teach you how to use the program. They just expect you to use it, right? I'm thinking, is that how it works? Or
She did a little rundown, but not enough for me to be not enough. So
not enough to really feel like you can. Okay, got it.
no, but I've experimented a little bit, but I definitely need teaching.
Okay, great. So Lyric, do you have any experience with Illustrator?
No.
All right. How about with any other Adobe program? And this question is for everyone. Has anyone else used like Photoshop, for example? If so, give me a yes. If you've, because I kind of know what the rest of you guys have been on and off in some of my Illustrator classes. Grace, if you can answer, were you in an Illustrator class or in a Photoshop class in the past? Or is Illustrator new to you? I know that you're driving, but if you can give me a verbal answer at some point, let me know. But otherwise, let me know when you arrive. Okay. So Lyric, have you used Photoshop before?
No.
Okay. So those are usually the two Adobe programs people know the most. If at all, people tend to know Photoshop more. So that just gives me an idea of prior experience. Now, when you open the application, this window pops in. When you want to open a new file, this window pops in, and it asks you a couple of would seem like basic questions, but it really changes your whole file and how it's set up based on these choices that you have up here. If you click on mobile over here, let's click on the word mobile. The whole screen changes to something. If you click on, print, this whole thing changes. And the changes are important because this is the whole setup of the application of the file that you're going to create. And it makes a big difference depending on what your final project is all about. So say that your final project is going to be something that's going to be for a website that's going to be seen only on screen, then the original setup over here is going to be different than if it's going to be something that's going to be printed. So those are the two main differences. So if you look at these names over here, you'll see that there's art and illustration or print. Both of these are going to be somehow possibly printed, versus that film and video or web or mobile for sure are just going to be for a screen. Now that's the main distinction. That said, if you look every time I click, like if I click on mobile or on web and I go over here to the right, you'll notice that by default, the size is going to show up as pixels. If I click on web, it'll show up as pixels, but it's pre-sizing it differently. But then if you look down here, there's one more change, which it talks about the color mode. it says RGB. So for both web or mobile, it says RGB. And for film and video, it also says RGB down here. And RGB are colors of red, green, and blue, which are colors of light. So anything that you're going to create is going to have to be created and watched on a screen, which means that the way a screen or a computer monitor works, it just has 3 colors to create millions of colors. And it uses a combination of those 3 tones of light to create your final project. On the other hand, look what happens when I click on print. Well, first of all, the sizing doesn't say pixels anymore. It now says points. And when you head down to the color mode, it says CMYK. CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. CMYK are the colors of ink. So if you've ever had a printer that you've had to refill the inks, you notice that there's 4 colors of ink that work on a desktop printer. Those same 4 colors of ink work on big web presses that print thousands of, magazines and newspapers and books that all day. It's just, though it's not, it's the combination of those 4 colors of ink that gives us the millions of colors that we need in order to create something that's printed. So you want to know ahead of time, what's your output? What's your final intention? There's one more difference here. Over here, it says PPI 300, which I'm going to talk about that resolution in a moment, but it's less appropriate. It's less necessary for Illustrator if you create your art in Illustrator. But if you bring in, say, a photograph to be part of your information, to be part of your art, say that you're making a poster and you're putting a photograph that you worked on in Photoshop, then it's important that it be at PPI, which is pixels per inch 300. I'll explain that later. Versus if you see any art that's going to be on the web or on screen, you'll notice that it say PPI 72. So we're going to talk about that later. And then the last choice, art and illustration, you don't know yet if it's going to be on screen or if it's going to be on something to print. When you look over here, it gives you the size again in points, but the color mode in RGB. So there's a whole combination of reasons why we choose one or the other. Right now, let's go and decide that we're going to start with something that's going to go to print. So if ever in doubt, print is the safest one, because you can always use anything that goes to print to screen, but not vice versa. If you designed it to go to a screen, it might not work for print. But if you go to print, you can always use it for screen. So when in doubt, if you don't know what's going to be your final, endpoint, then starting with print is a better way to start. Just over here on the right, you might have never come across the sizing called points for a whole document, but you've always, I'm sure you've had to use Word or something like that, where you can choose like a font and make it 12-point New Roman or something like that, right? So that's the sizing. But it's not familiar to most people. So if you click on the word points here, you'll see that you can change this to inches or centimeters or whatever else that you're the most comfortable with. So let's go ahead and switch that to inches. And so this now becomes 8.5 by 11 basic letter size. Now over here, you can decide if you want it in one orientation and another. Let's go ahead and put it in the side landscape orientation. Artboards is what we call a page in Illustrator. Instead of saying page 1, page 2, we have artboards, which operate slightly similar to a page in InDesign, but they do have their own specialty. So for now, that's all we're going to do. We're not going to work with any of the advanced tools today. But notice here then that what we're choosing is going to end up being in CMYK mode, and it's going to be at 300 PPI. So we'll understand those things once we move in. There we go. Create. Now, VDI works 99% really well. but it tends to be slower than the versions that you guys have at home. And one more thing you need to know is that you guys at home are probably working with the version of 2022. But notice that for school, the Illustrator that we have is version 2021. So there might be some things that are slightly different, but you'll never know. So ask me if you go, it's different in mine, let me know and I'll tell you if it's because it's a different version of Illustrator or if something else is going on that's wrong. All right, now when you first open the application, the kind of tools or windows that you have might be very different depending on what settings you've used it as before. So the first thing I need us all to do is to head up to the workspace and set our workspace, meaning the surface that we're seeing, to be the same for all of us. So what do I mean is over here on the far right, you can see my mouse moving over to the far right. There's a little box that if you hover over it, it says switch workspace. Now, for those of you who are I'm just opening the Mac here to see. When you have a Mac, it's the final furthest to the right icon right here. It's workspace. For the PC, it's right here. Click on that. And by default, you should be on Essentials because that's the one that if you've never opened the application, it wants you to be in, but it's possible that you had changed it, right? So what happens when you change to a different workspace? Illustrator can do a ton of different things and it has so many tools that it can't show them all of you at once. So say that you're going to be doing work that's for the web and you click on web, see how certain things change. In particular, what changes a lot is if what's available to you here on this side, but your tools that are available to you here change as well. And then you have this top bar here with stuff that is going to modify your tools. Let's switch that back to, for example, if you're going to be printing and you click on that, then you get a whole different set of tools. And over here, these are more subtle, but tools have changed here as well, et cetera, et cetera. So if you've used Illustrator way in the past, the essentials that worked up until a year ago was Essentials Classic. And Essentials Classic was set with a ton of different tools. And I have used this one for 20 years and it's wonderful, but it has a ton of tools. And it at the beginning is a bit more confusing for people to use. So now they've created a new Essentials and they called the original Essentials Classic. That's the old one. And now they have just Essentials. So let's go back to Essentials to start with, which when you are beginning is a simpler set of tools. So we're going to start with that one. And then when we need any of the more advanced tools, we can just bring them up at our leisure. Now, when you go to Essentials, you might have modified it from being used in other times. So then the next thing I want you all to do is head down to Reset Essentials and click on that so that everything resets to whatever the basic beginning of Essentials starts at. And so we all now should have the identical set of tools available. Now, when you look at, for VDI people, there's about 3 of you guys are on VDI. On the left side, we have like this weird white thing appearing here on the far left side. This is not part of Illustrator. If you click on that, that's part of the VDI. And so if this happens that you try to get a tool and you pick this up, just click on this tab again and it'll just disappear again. Okay, so it's that white tab there that gets kind of in the way because it's in the way of some of our tools, but we'll manage to avoid those and we'll be fine. We don't need those tools to start with. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is up here on the top left, we're going to become familiar with some of these main tools. Now, there's a black arrow tool and a white arrow tool. And what they do is they just both look like arrows, but they operate completely differently. They do almost the opposite thing. So we need to become familiar with each one of these do. But you're going to need to be coming back to these tools all the time. You'll be in one tool, then you'll go to another tool. So there's a quick way to access all these tools, which is with just quick keyboard strokes. So say that I want to grab the pen tool right now, instead of going with my mouse down to the pen tool, I can go to my keyboard and tap the letter P. Tap the letter P and see how the pen tool got selected. Or if I want to type, I can type the letter T. And when I do that, I went and the letter T is the type tool, etc., etc. Most of them are kind of easy like that. Pen and T, that, you know, obviously text for type. But some are a little bit more confusing. Eyedropper, for example, is the letter I. So then you go to the eyedropper. Anyway, so I'll always be calling out these letters for you to learn them. I recommend while you're in class with me and I'm calling them out, I recommend that you really give it a try and use the shortcuts, because then it'll become kind of second nature to you. But if you don't have a chance to do that, when you're on your own, you'll have to learn them on your own from scratch. So I recommend you just kind of listen to me and do what I say. So the main shortcut, or the main letter, the tool that we want to be on all the time, like when you're on anything else temporarily, you're always going to end up heading back to that the top black arrow tool. The shortcut for that one is V. Now notice if I hover over it, if you forget what the shortcut is, it'll say that it says, is without clicking, just to hover, it says selection tool and between parentheses V. And this is the direct selection tool between parentheses A. So think of V and A. So the two arrow tools, the V is your black one, the A is your white one. I'm going to use those so much. This is really good to learn. So hit the V to go back to the black arrow tool. I'm going to be teaching you as much as I can shortcuts, because that's really going to make the difference between a beginner and a comfortable user of Illustrator. So now that you're in the selection tool, you might have been paying attention that as we changed tools, this panel kept changing. So let me show you again. Now that you know that what we're going to do is use some keys and strokes, keep your eye on this. And now let's click on that eye again for eyedropper, and see how what shows up in this properties panel has changed tremendously. Now I'm going to go to the T for type, and a new set of things appears on this properties panel. Now let's go back to the V or black arrow tool and look at the properties panel. So the properties panel is completely dependent on what tool that you are using. It's going to give you whatever it thinks you're going to need. This is that big difference that occurred. This property panel appeared about, let's say 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And that's the big setup right now for Essentials tool, is this properties panel. Before, you had to go and find all this stuff individually. So this property panel is going to become pretty crucial to us. We're going to use it a lot. So just be aware that what's on it will always change based on what tool you have. So if what you're looking for isn't there, it might be that you have the wrong tool. Go change your tool, or it'll change based on what you have selected. And depending on what you have selected, it'll change again. So for example, let's start by making something. Down here, about 4 or 5 down, we have a shape tool, which says rectangle tool. The M is the shortcut for the rectangles. It used coming in from another place that used to be called the marquee. Anyway, there's a reason for that M, but right now that one isn't one of the logical ones. So you can click the letter M, or you can click on the rectangle. And now our mouse is set to just make rectangles. And if I click and drag, and boom, a rectangle pops up. Now I'm going to delete that for a second, because if you didn't click and drag and you just clicked a single click, then the choices for what size do you want to make your rectangle appear as a numbered choice. So if you say, for example, that you want a 2 and you hit the tab and 2 by 2 and you say okay, then that gives you a rectangle as well. Hit the delete key to get rid of that one, and the other option is to click and drag. So those are the 2 ways to create a shape, either by single clicking, choosing it by size. I'm going to cancel. I rarely do that one unless you do something that's very precise and you need something to be very exact. I prefer making it by dragging it out, which, as you can see, when I don't let go, so I'm dragging it out, but I'm not letting go, then you see the size. And so as I'm making it right there, you see a little width and height, and then I can choose what size I want to do it. Now, all I have is rectangle making tool. So if I tried to do anything else, nothing else happens but rectangles. When I'm ready to do something else, I need to go back to the black arrow tool. So the black arrow tool, how did I get back to that one? What was the shortcut for that one? You can use the chat, you can speak out. It's good to have yourselves on unmute so that you can all respond. But I do want you to say it because when you are learning, there's all these different ways of getting information into your body. And one of them is verbal. So if you say it, you might remember it more than if you just hear it, and you might remember it more than if you just read it, right? So just when I say, hey, what's a shortcut? Just internally, just go V, you know, until you finally figure it out. All right. So now I'm going to hit the V to go back. Sorry, my thing is running around because I'm moving my mouse. So now I'm back in the black arrow tool. I've created all these little boxes. Some of you guys might have them on top of the other. And I want you to know that the default setting for creating a rectangle is the most boring box in the world. It's a little black outline. And that outline, we call it a stroke. It's like a border or an outline is a stroke. And so the default ones of these become outlined with black or stroked with black with a thin little stroke. And over here, you can see that stroke. It shows me a little outline, little box here. It's black, and it shows me that it's 1 point, which is really tiny. Now it's only showing because I'm still selecting this box because I'm in the V tool. If I now were to select nothing, like down here, we call click away, we tend to call that one, then now nothing is selected. And when I go over here, my properties panel has disappeared. I don't know what color these boxes are or where the stroke is. So in order to see that information, I need to select a box again. When I select a box, now I see that the fill is white. Yep, and the stroke is black and it's 1 point. So that's pretty important. This is our appearance panel. So let's change the appearance of one of these boxes by clicking on the fill right here and choosing a different fill. So now we have a pink fill, and let's go and choose a different color for our stroke. So I'm going to click here on stroke and choose any color except for blue. You'll see why in a minute. So I'm going to go with a lightish green for my stroke. Now, you can barely tell it's there. In fact, you might only see a little bit of a green if you click away and you see a little tiny bit of green. But if I click on it again, just for learning about strokes, I'm going to make a big fat stroke here. So we can either go 1, 1, 1 to make it bigger, or we can click on this arrow. And let's start by making a really big fat, like 10-point stroke so we can really see it well. Now, I want to show you some stuff here in detail, but it's hard to see in detail when we're moved so far out. And what I mean by so far out, we're zoomed away. So the easiest way to zoom in and out with shortcuts is to use your keyboard. And some of you guys have your mouse set up to zoom in and out. If you do, that's fine. That's got to do with the preferences in the preferences panel or in your tools. But I find the best way, because your mouse might be busy doing other stuff. So in fact, the keyboard's always available no matter what your mouse is doing. So if you're on a Mac, you'll use the command key, which is on your keyboard. If you're on a PC, you'll use the control key. And now for people who are on VDI, like Lyric, who are Mac users or me, this is where it gets slightly confusing because you're a Mac user, but on VDI, you're a PC user. So you need to use the control key for the shortcut. So this is the only thing that's really different. For PC users, control, you hold down the control key. And for Mac users who are on VDI, we use the control key. Everyone, Mac users on their real computer that is a Mac, you get to use the command key. All right, so control, and then tap the plus sign, which is way up at the top next to the numbers, and let's go plus, 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 and we zoom in. And or control, keep the control hit down, so that one you don't need to tap, and then you just tap the minus to zoom out, okay? So zoom out and then zoom in using the minus and the plus. And this is available to us no matter what tool we're using, no matter how busy our mouse is doing other stuff. So this is a really good shortcut to learn, command or control plus or minus, okay? Now, what about when you just want to return to see the entire screen? One thing that can happen very easily is for a lot of people, suddenly you just kind of lose everything. Like maybe you've used these guys and suddenly you're like, where's everything gone? Just to center everything on the screen again, control and then tap the letter 0 centers everything back onto your screen. So if you're really far in and really far out and you just kind of went like, I want to see the whole thing again, Control 0 brings it all up again. Okay. So those are really important shortcuts for people who know Photoshop. There's one more really important one, which is 100%. And the 100% is really meaningful for resolution conversations. But in Illustrator, resolution is not an issue. But Control 1 would be 100%. We really don't care about that one. I'm saying because most of you guys have taken one of my Photoshop classes and you know that I always focus on the 100%. That's not important in Illustrator. So really the only ones that matter are Control plus, minus, and Control 0. And I'm going to constantly having you guys zoom in and zoom out. In this case, let's zoom in. Now notice that if I don't click on anything, so I'm meaning when I say that, I say click away and nothing is selected. If I zoom in, it just kind of zooms in. So Control plus plus S into the middle of the page, leaving me kind of in the middle of the page. So I'll say Control 0 again. And if I really want to zoom into something in particular, I need to select it. So if I select this little box and I zoom in with a Control plus, I zoom into that one. And I can do Control 0, click on this one and zoom into this one now. Okay. So it's really important for speed's sake to know all these things and shortcuts that I'm telling you about. Now let's back out a little bit again with Control 0 and let's pay a little bit of attention to these boxes that we've created. When you select a box, you can hold it from the middle of it and just drag it around. And that's because this box is filled. And what you're really grabbing is that fill. Now, I'm going to go ahead and grab one of these other boxes. If you didn't make many boxes, go back to your selection tool and create another one. We're going to create 2 or 3, and they can be one on, at least 4 or 5. So now this thing that we're selecting isn't empty. It truly is filled with white. So much so that if I were to put it on top of this guy, it's going to work. It's going to cover that white one. But if you try to put one of the ones that you made before up here, notice that it doesn't work because it goes underneath. It's not that it's transparent. It's just that it's going underneath. And the one that I created last, because I just went and let's go back to your selection tool and create one more box. It's actually going to go on top. Now, the box that you created might have come out white and black, or might have come out whatever colors you made it, depending on what you're selecting. So watch, if I'm selecting one of these guys, the appearance and fill that shows up there is stroke and white. So if I now go and select the making box tool and make a new one, it's going to come out with those appearance settings. I'm going to go back to the V tool, select the pink and blue one. So the appearance settings are pink and green. So now when I go select my rectangle tool and make a tool, it's going to come out pink and green. So it adopts whatever appearance is already there. Okay. So you need to know that when you have an appearance set, that's going to stay there. And as long as you keep that selected, the next one is going to appear that same appearance. So right now I have a huge mess of boxes all over the place. And the top one is always going to be the last one you made. So these are the 2 last ones I made, and they're way above anything else. On the other hand, the other ones hide underneath. So if I move any of these on top of the other old ones, they disappear. So we're going to spend a little bit of time with that in a second, but I just want to make sure that everything I'm doing, you're replicating. And if there's anything that you need, I'm going to clear out your feedback. If you need anything or something's not working for you, please speak up so that I can help you with. So say that, and this is, the beginnings, but for some people, the beginnings, okay, we've done this. So I'm doing this really quickly. For a few of you guys are new to this. And I really want you to stop me and ask me something. Don't just like, oh, well, I don't know what she did there. Now, I haven't done anything necessarily that complicated yet, but if you're completely new to the program, it might feel complicated, but I will be getting into complicated things. So get accustomed to stopping and asking me. Raise your hand with the emoticon, with the emojis, or just speak up and say, well, that didn't work for me. Ideally, if a lot of you have a question, the hand puts you in order. But if it's very few of us, I'm not teaching a 30-person class today. if it's very few of us and you happen to just say, hey, well, how about if I try this thing? Plus, there's a lot of you guys here who have taken some Illustrator before, or in your case, with the other class. So you might have a question here that applies to something that you already know. There's so few of us that I'm more than happy to take questions, even they're a little bit off, so you can advance based on where you're at in your knowledge already. Okay, so just speak up or raise your hand. Since when no one speaks, I'll keep going, but I really, really, really want you to know that if I keep going and I've lost you, that's not my goal. There's different ways of teaching. My way of teaching is that anyone who is in class walks away knowing what we taught that day. Okay, and that means that you need to commit to asking me when you are left behind. And I want to explain this now when everyone still is kind of at the beginning, because as we move forward, there are different levels of knowledge here. And I don't want you to feel, oh, well, no one's asking anything, so I shouldn't ask. That's because most people here have already done Illustrator. There's only a few people who are new to it. Okay. And then as we move forward, everyone will be working hard. All right. So let's go ahead and say that I don't want all of these boxes, right? So, oh, no, wait, one more thing. Now, how do you know that these are filled with white when you can't see? The only way you can tell is if you try to put it on top of something else and discover that it is filled with white. Now, which ones of these are white? Which ones are underneath? Which ones are on the top? I don't know. Every time you try to put something in there, one works and one doesn't work, right? So what's up? Here's the deal. If you created it first, it's at the bottom. If you created it last, it's at the top. So there's like this stacking level. So where do you see this stacking level? You know, unless you remember, because after a while, I'm not going to remember which one I made first and which one I made last. I don't know, no idea, right? So how do you remember, how do you find that out is by using layers. So right now we're looking at the properties panel, but right next to the properties panel, there's 3 different tabs, and we're going to be using these and a lot more. But right now, let's go to the layers tab. This layers tab shows me that there's just one layer. Yes, in Illustrator, we don't use many layers as opposed to in Photoshop, as we use them more selectively. What we have is one layer with a lot of different objects. Each one of these is an object. So I'm going to go ahead and expand this layer by clicking on this little arrow, and there's all the different objects that I've created. And you can see that there's quite a few little white ones and these 2 bright pink ones. Each one of these elements is one of the objects I just created. So notice if I click by hand, one of these guys, I'll just don't even know which one it is. Over here, it'll give me a little blue little square telling me that's the one I've selected. Now I'm going to select this one and see how that one there has that little blue box. So now I'm beginning to be able to distinguish and see, oh, well, this one is one of the first ones I created because it's at the bottom. And the very first one I created is this one. And I can't tell which one it is. So how do I select it? I go to this little round little dot that's there and click on it. And I go, oh, there you go. That's my bottom most of them all. That's the first one that I made. And which the last one that I made, I'll click over here. Oh, that's the last one that I made. So by clicking on these little round dots on the layers, I can individually select exactly the thing that I want to work with. Okay, so now that I know that this one I made almost next to last, it should appear underneath that one, but above that one. Well, let's see. If I go to the one that's like sideways pink rectangle, which is this one, then this is going to appear behind it. But if I go to the one that's standing, which is that one, oh, yeah, I'm on top of it. But now it begins to be a bit more sense because I can see here my stacking order. Okay, all right. Let's go ahead and move all these guys out, and I have one more thing to show you. Go ahead and find a rectangle that is above a colored one. So any of these 3, in my case, any of the white rectangles that is above the first colored one you made. And then let's put it on top so that you're hiding it. One of the filled ones, put it a little bit on top so that you're seeing that it's actually hiding. And then put one of the ones that's older. And if you don't know which, let's go down here and find one of these older ones and also put it near, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger there. So now I have one each of these white ones on top and below one of the colored ones. Is everyone following? All right, so what we're gonna do next is show you what's up with this white artboard. So this, what I remember, I called it an artboard. This paper is an artboard here. So it's not really white. What it's doing is it's making it easy to see the objects. Let's head over to the view tab right up there at the very top and head down to the show transparency grid. So again, let's go to the view up there and show transparency grid. Here comes Liz. All right. So my screen has changed radically. And what I am seeing is this little checkered background, which for Adobe products, every application in Adobe, when there is nothing there or transparency, it shows up as this little checkered gray and white box. So right now, this is the proof that these boxes were really filled with white, because as you can see, we could tell already because we had stacked them. But in the end, the only reason this shows up as white is for us to be able to really see our objects and make it easier to design, because with that pattern, it's really hard to make it design. But if I were to print this document and this whole artboard were to print on a piece of paper that's white, well, then you'd have a few little black lines and that's all you'd have. And then here you'd have pink and green stuff. But if you were to say print this on top of a piece of paper that you put in a printer that's a red piece of paper, then you would have these boxes on top of red. Does that make sense? This doesn't exist. Whatever's down there is just for us to see, but it means nothing. So go ahead and click on one of these white ones that's in here, and let's head back to the properties panel. It doesn't matter which white one you choose, but in this case, I'm going to choose one that's kind of overlapping one of the shapes. And now I'm going to actually take the fill off of it. So it's possible to have an object with no fill. So I'm going to go over to the fill, and the top row of the these are called swatches, color samples. And the very first one on the top left right here is telling me it's filled with white, is this one that says no fill, none. So now I'm going to fill it with none. And now you can see that this is truly transparent. If I click away, the only reason I see it is because I still have a stroke on this shape. I'm going to go ahead and fill this one also with none, one of the pink ones with none. And what I see is the green stroke, but truly this is transparent. So much so that I can't even grab it anymore from the middle. It's like trying to pick up a donut from the hole. There's all the rest were grabbable, but that's because they had a fill. But when something is filled with nothing, the only thing you can do is point very precisely to its stroke or path, and then you can click and grab and move it. So in this case, you need to grab it from the path or you won't be able to move it. But as you can see, since this one is empty, you know, I just see through whatever it's on and I have to grab that stroke. Now, what if I don't even have a stroke? Yeah, it's possible to have not even a stroke. So I'm going to have this shape and I'm going to select it, and I already took the fill out. Okay, now I'm going to go to the stroke and I'm going to take the stroke out. So even though I took the fill out and the stroke out, I'm still seeing something. And that which thing which I'm seeing is the thing that holds my shape, which is a bounding box. If I now were to click on it, I can still move it around, but when I see how it kind of disappears, and when I click away from it, the whole thing has completely disappeared. Now, it's not that I've deleted my shape. It's just that I have a shape there. It exists. It's been created in Illustrator with paths and anchors. We're going to talk about what that is in a second, but it has no appearance. So how do I find it? Well, if I hover around with my mouse, see how somehow it appears and disappears? So if I know it's supposed to be there and I go with my mouse slowly until I touch it, it'll appear. When I move away, it'll disappear. But the other way, remember, we have layers, and in the layers, they're all still there. right? So if I were to click one of these at a time, at some point, one of them, there it is, there's that shape. So the shape truly still is there. It just doesn't have appearance properties set to it. Let's go back to properties and give it, let's give it this time a fill without a stroke. So let's try and make this one, I don't know, yellow. And it has no stroke. Okay, so you can have a shape with stroke, without fill, or with fill, and they're all still in existence as long as you've made them. So let's go ahead and go back to the view, and let's go back to the logical normal way to see this, which is hide transparency grid. And now it's back to being in white. So, okay, so the orders are always going to be show the transparency grid. It's not hide white, it shows the grid, the transparency. That's when we don't see it, or hide the transparency so that basically goes and looks white again. Okay, so now we're left with all of this original stuff that we made. Let's go ahead and get rid of a lot of them because I want to start teaching you some other stuff. So how do we get rid of them? Just select them and hit your delete key on your keyboard, and boom, out they go. Select and hit your delete key. Select and hit your delete key. So we're going to delete most of them except for
Hey,
one.
Deanna, can I stop you for a second? I
Yep. Mhm.
got trouble here.
Of course.
Okay, so may I share?
Yeah. Wait. I'm going to stop my share. Yeah. Share your screen. Oh, that's something I haven't
Okay.
shown you. You guys who have, 1 second, for you guys who haven't yet used Zoom before, the easiest way, Vera has taken classes with me before, to ask a question is always to share your screen. So when you when it's your turn and you need to share your screen, if you've never done it before, I'll walk you through it, but it takes a second and is the much fastest way to show me. Okay, so yes, Vera.
So I wanted to do what you did to go to get a clear, and I didn't know how to go back to when I selected my selection tool.
Yeah, because you're
Don't
select. Yeah, it seems that you are selecting the things that are already transparent. Looks like you already took the fill out. So you can't select them from the middle and only from the border. And the reason I know is because I can see that, look a little bit to your left, and you can see how you can see both of the black outlines. That means that they're both empty. Otherwise, one would be on top of the other. Empty means in the middle, there's nothing. So click on the stroke. Click on the stroke or the outline.
Okay, this one's blue, this one's black. The blue one?
Either one, it doesn't matter. Select it. And now you can go and, well, actually that one does have a fill.
So only one, probably the last one is left available. Is that what you mean?
No, it's interesting. Go ahead and click on the one that's underneath by clicking on the stroke of that black one, like on the stroke. No, on the stroke itself. See how that one, if you look at your appearance, it has no fill. If you look at the appearance, so go give it some fill now. And give it a color. Yeah. So when you were trying to grab it before and you couldn't do anything with it, is because you were trying to grab it from the middle when there was nothing there. So you couldn't move it. That's why. But now you should be able, now the bottom one, on the other hand, the one right underneath it. No, the two that are overlapping bottom one, sorry. One to the left. Yeah. That one does have a fill. So you should be able to select it from the middle of it and move it. Click and drag. See?
All right, so that one's white. So always on the edge.
Well, no, white fill you can grab from the middle. It doesn't matter if it's white or red. It's only when it's none or transparent that you can't grab from the middle, which your red one had a none, and that's why you couldn't grab it. Okay.
All right.
But as long as it has a fill, and with the white one, it's hard to tell. With the colors, it's always easy to tell if it has a fill. But with a white fill, you're left with, if you're trying to grab it and you can't, then it's probably a none. So then go to the stroke. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. I have a couple of other things that I want to tell you. When you are taking this class, by the way, hi Liz, before your sound wasn't on, nice to see you. So when you're taking this class, every now and then I'll be hopefully you guys have taken my classes before, will help me remember. But I need you guys to do screenshots of your work, and then I'll show you where to post them so that I can kind of keep an idea of your progress. Okay. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but if I don't see you, I don't see you doing your work, I can't even tell if you're there. You might be watching a TV program as far as I'm concerned. So, so the way for me to know that you're progressing, unless you have a reason to share your screen with me to show me something, most of the times, if everything is going fine and you don't need my support, then I won't see your screen. So then I need you guys to post your work. So I have made a Padlet right here where you're going to get to post your stuff. So for example, this is my Photoshop Padlet where a lot of people posted different camels because the last week we were working with these camels.
Show
the
your
end of the-
screen.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you for reminding me. After someone shares, I forget that I'm not showing. There we go. So there's something called Padlet that I have created for our class where everyone posts a screenshot of the work that they're working on, so that I can see their work. So this is a Photoshop class Padlet. This is an Illustrator class, class Padlet from before where people are posting some things they made. So this is our Padlet for Illustrator Summer 2. Right now it's empty, but what I want you guys to do is to practice using it. So what we're going to do right now, I'm going to head back to the Illustrator and show you how to do a screenshot of this that we're doing, which is really inconsequential. Whatever you have here right now is not, a huge piece of art. But it shows, I want to teach you how to use the Padlet, right? So what I need you to do is to do a screenshot of this work, of your work. So if you are on a Mac, and is anyone else on a Mac here that's truly just on their own, or you're all, most of the times it's a combination, but I think most of you guys, Vera, you're a Mac person, right? Or not?
Yes.
Okay, but you've been using Padlet. So most of you guys, if you're a Mac, you can do Control and for this one, Lyric, you can do the shortcut as if you were on a Mac. Okay, so you can do this, hold the Shift, the Command, and the letter 4. And the number 4. So it's 3 different keyboards. This is for Mac. It's different for a PC. So Shift, Command, and 4, and your mouse turns into like a little target, and then you can click and drag and select that area that you want to screen shoot. Sometimes I'll be wanting to see your groups, your layers. You can also do a Shift, Command, 4. And drag across like that and show me your layers, because there will be stuff we'll be doing there that I'll need to see. So take a screenshot of stuff that shows me your work. If you're on a Mac, that's very easy. Those 2 screenshots went and sit on your desktop right now, which you don't want to keep all these things on your desktop in the future, but for now, they temporarily sit on your desktop. If you're on a PC, on the other hand, and you need to take a screenshot, you have to go down to this type here to search. You can click on that, and over here it says, oh, why is my type here to search not working? Hello, PC. There it is, type here to search. And then you can start working, write the word snip for snipping tool, and it comes up. So the word snip pulls up your snipping tool, and click on that snipping tool. And when it opens up, it's this little box, and you have to say new, and everything goes gray. And it doesn't matter that this is in the way. You can still grab with this tool, which is now across, again, like a little X, you can click and drag across that which you want to do. And it turns into this little file that's a bit more complicated than the Mac. You actually have to save it. So you need to go to File, Save, and then give it a name like Illustrator Shapes or something like that, or whatever you want to call it. It's temporary. And then put it wherever you want to put it to save it. So maybe you want to save it also on your desktop, or you just choose wherever you want to save it in this PC and save it. So anyway, that's how you do it for the PC. So I'm going to now go and so that's what I need you to post. So now I'm going to give you the Illustrator Padlet link, and I'm going to email this to you, but I've just put it in the chat. So everyone go to the chat and click on that link that I gave you, because I want you guys to do your first post on this Illustrator Padlet so we can inaugurate it. So if you click on this, that link, it should take you to this Padlet. Let me know if it didn't work, give me a no. And if it worked, give me a yes. So that's the green or the red buttons. Once you're here, you're going to post that which we are making right now. So how do we post? On the very bottom right of the screen, there's a little plus sign. You're going to click on that and this little box opens up, and it's really important to tell me your name, because otherwise it's anonymous. So in this case, it's going to be Diana. Okay, so put your name on the top as a subject. And then you can click on this first little icon that says upload. Okay, and then you go and find it. Like in the Mac, I left it on my desktop and there's my screenshot. Okay, so I can go ahead and choose one of these two, depending on what I'm going to do, and then double click or pull it in or say, okay, and it's going to show up. If I have a question or if I want to say something about it, like here's my class sample, sometimes you guys are making logos, you're going to be making products. You can say something about it, like I couldn't, do this, or I was able to do that. So you might write something here. This is as basic as it's going to get. Here's my shapes. And then you hit the word publish. And there it is. It's popped up. So go ahead and everyone pop up your screen grab that you just made. And I know it's just barely a beginning, but I just want you to I want everyone to have something posted to make sure that you know how to use the Padlet, okay? Especially new people to the class like Shayna and Lyric and Grace. I don't know if you're still driving, who have not posted things to the Padlet before. All right. And again, this is in part, when I have 30 people, there's no way that I know what everyone's doing their work unless we see it here. So you are less. But if for any reason you don't need to share your screen because you're totally caught up and everything's fine, then the only way I get to see the work you're doing is by seeing it in here. All right. So Lyric, do you need a hand posting yours?
No, I'm good.
Okay, then go ahead and post it. I'll go back to Illustrator, but I'll keep checking in here. Because especially if I don't see your work shared. So Vera, did you put yours up there yet? I know you know how to use this, so you might not see. There's Lyric. Cool. Vera, I don't see yours yet.
Yeah, I'll do it again.
So try again, yeah. All right, cool. So great. Now, most of the times, posting your layers like Saul and Shayna did here is a good idea, especially when we start having groups and different layers and stuff like that to show me how you're creating your shape. But in this case, whatever it is that you've created works well. Now, one more thing. If you are, well, in this case, screenshots is how we're going to do. In the past, some people, no, it's okay. I won't even give you the idea. If you put the Illustrator file, it becomes a problem. You could post it, but then it's only downloadable. So if you ever need to share with me a file that I need to download to open to see something that's happening, you can actually drag in a full-on Illustrator file. But for the most part, if you're just showing me the work that you did that day, then there's no need to do that, and we can just you can just post a screenshot. Now, don't forget to not clutter your desktop with screenshots and go and trash those screenshots after you post them, because they're not useful for anyone, and they stay on your desktop and start filling up your screen, which is kind of useless stuff. All right. All right. So now let's head back into Illustrator, and now I'm going to show you a couple of other things. First of all, right now I have a shape that has no fill, but it has a stroke, a shape with a stroke, a stroke and no fill with no stroke, and then a shape with both. All of these when you look up close, have this blue line right there, and these little white boxes. Now, it's a bit easier to demo this with not a square, and you'll see why, but with a circle. So if you have made a couple of these, let's move them around. I mean, ideally you have a little bit of an array like this right now going on. Now click your mouse down here. Let's go back to properties, and let's create, since I'm not selecting one of these, if I am, they would come in this color, but if I'm not selecting, the first one is going to come out again, black outline, 1 point stroke, and filled with white, which is a really horrible way to start. So I could pre-choose my properties. So how do we do that? I go to the shapes, right? So let me go to where I have my shapes, and notice that you can have a rectangle if you use the rectangle, but if you click and hold, you can also have an ellipse tool, and when you let go, that turns into an ellipse, or you can make a bunch of other shapes. So let's sit on the ellipse tool, and that is going to let us make a circle. But if I make a circle right now, I want to, before I make it this time, change the appearance. Otherwise, it'll give me whatever appearance is sitting there, black, white, pink, green. So I can click on the fill and first choose a different fill. I'm going to go with, I don't know, blue fill and purple stroke. No, let me go back to pink stroke, and make any stroke except for blue, and you'll know why. And the stroke can still be really fat, which is 10 points, which is good. And let's make a circle. Now, when you make a circle, it's going to come out with these new appearances. And when you first make a circle or an oval, when you click, remember, if you just single click, it'll be by numbers, but if you click and drag, it pulls out kind of from the top. Okay. And now I'm not letting go of my mouth yet until I decide the shape I want. So if I want a perfect circle, I have to hold the shift key, and that forces it into a perfect circle. Now I'm holding the shift key, and it can only be a big or a small circle. But if I let go of my shift key, it can be anything. And then I'd have to wait until I get those perfects, two green smart guides, two pink smart guides to show me that they are a perfect circle. Otherwise, the easiest way is to hold the shift key. All right, I don't want a perfect circle. I want just whatever comes out. So I'm going to make this shape and let go. All right, so now we have the circle tool. Let's make another one over here, and then let's be done. And in order to be done, I need to go back to my move tool. So hit the V or black selection tool again. You kind of want to remember to always be in your black selection tool, or you'll keep making circles and squares. All right, so here's the big difference between a rectangle or a circle, is that both are being held by a bounding box, which is this blue outline here. That's a box that contains my element. The thing is that you really see it in a circle, but you don't see it in a rectangle because the bounding box is the same shape as the shape. So that blue thing that's there is an actual bounding box that's holding my shape. And I get this because I'm in the black selection tool. If I click away and do not have any selection on and choose the white selection tool, which is the direct selection tool, the shortcut for it is letter A, and now I choose my shape, it does not come with a bounding box. So it's a very different initial appearance. On the circle, it's easy to tell. On this rectangle, it's harder to tell. That's why I'm having you compare rectangle to circle. So now what's the difference between the white arrow tool and the black arrow tool? It's hugely different. So let's head back to the black arrow tool, the one that gives us the bounding box. And if you're not sure, then click on your circle to make sure that it's the black arrow tool. You should see bounding box. The black arrow tool allows me to see the bounding box, which then lets me make a shape taller or shorter, thinner or wider. So it distorts the shape, but the shape is still recognizable. So I could end up with a completely different shape but it's still an oval of some kind or another, right? Same with the rectangle. I can make it fat, squat, long, thin. If I grab it from the corners, I can make it thin and wide and fat at the same time. Okay, so that's what I get when I use the black arrow tool. So again, the corner allows me to make things white and skinny or fat and tall at the same time. Now, if again, I hold the shift key and I choose a corner, then I can make this bigger or smaller proportionally. Okay, so I do want to make this exactly the same it is, but proportional, then I need to hold down the shift key and hold a corner. And if I hold a side or a corner, it works, but I need to be holding down the shift key the whole time. The moment I let go of the shift key, this becomes non-proportional to my shape. So again, with this, with the black, with the rectangle, proportional, corner, top and bottom corner. Okay, so that's the shift key. All right, so now what's the big difference then with the white arrow tool? Let's click away so there's no selection. Go grab your white or direct selection tool, which is also the A is the shortcut for it. And now we have a completely different creature. Let's grab that same shape, and I'm going to move in a little bit with a command control plus. And so now this rectangle here has, when the bounding box is missing, right? So here's the bounding box is missing. We still have that blue line here, and that is a path, which is the side of my shape, and that is an anchor. You can even see the names that hover, anchor and path, anchor and path. And these are the elements that create my shape. They're the same ones that when I had no appearance, they still appeared. It's the path and the anchors. So I can now modify this shape by clicking on either the path or the anchors. If I were to just click on this path, I can drag this path in or out or up or down. I can click on this path and move it in and out or up or down. So I'm now beginning to modify my shape. Before it was a bigger or a smaller rectangle. Now it's actually turning into like a diamond or something else. Now, what if I also want to click on the anchors? So if I click on one anchor right now, and all four anchors can be clicked independently, then I can completely modify this shape into something it never was. It doesn't even look like a rectangle anymore. I can grab this guy and move that over there. I can overlap them. I can just do weird stuff. So the white selection tool allows me to modify a shape from its basic elements that create it, which are the paths and the anchors. So let's see what that looks like over here. I'm going to head over. Oh, I forgot to show you this thing. To move over, when you're zoomed into something and you want to move around to see something else, you can hold down your space bar. That gives you a little hand and you click and drag your way over, right? So now I want to move. So I'm holding the space bar. I'm dragging myself from one to the next. Now I can go to this one with the white selection tool. And when you first have the white selection tool, if you first click on an anchor, it's going to select all the anchors. So you need to click one more time to isolate one single anchor. And look at what happens when you have a circle. You also have these little handles. So I'm going to click on the anchor, the one that's actually, there's 4 anchor points. And these anchor points I can use to modify my shape just from the center of the anchor point. But each time I have a circle and I have an anchor point, I can also use these little handles that pop out from the center of the anchor. And I can go and grab this little handle and twist it back and forth to modify the shape of my curve. I can also move the handle out to make my curve more acute, so to say, or in towards the anchor to make it flatter. So the curvier I want it, the more further from the anchor. So the handles can move up or down or out and in, and or the anchor itself. Okay, so by the time I'm done with the white arrow tool, and I can also grab the path on its own too, just like I did before, and just move the path. Okay, so by the time I'm done with this white anchor tool, now I'm going to Command 0. I discover that the white selection tool completely modifies my shape. If I click somewhere in the middle of the fill, it still works to move the shape. But as I click onto these points that generate a shape, I modify my shape to the point that it's definitely not recognizable anymore from what it used to be. Okay. So remember, when you want the shape to stay what you want it, you use the black arrow. So now I've modified these so much that there's definitely not a circle and that's definitely not a rectangle. If I switch back to the black selection tool, I still have a bounding box on these new shapes. And if this bounding box allows me to then squish or make wider, taller, and higher, but it still kind of looks like the shape that I've got, right? So remember, when you want to modify the shape, but have it be still like, kind of recognizable, that's the bounding box. Now, one last thing, and then we're gonna take a break. When you want to select more than one at a time, because see, when I select one, the other one disappears, you can actually hold Shift key and select the other one. And now, as you can see, when you have two shapes, you still have just one bounding box. So the bounding box is like, imagine a little basket that holds the stuff that you're taking, and now both get modified at the same time. So I'm going to click away, and if I want to select this one, Shift, 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 then I have a big bounding box that seems to be going over those, but really it's only holding these. And if I click and drag, all three move at the same time. Even though it's over them, it's not really selecting them. It's just that the box can only be square, and that's why it's overlapping them. One more click away. If I want to select these with Shift, click, Shift, click, Shift, click, Shift, click, I can kind of select everything that way. But there's easier ways to do that. Instead of click shifting all my way around, I can also select the shape with my black arrow tool by just notice that here in the empty center part, I can click and drag, and I make like a little temporary, I call it casting a net. So my arrow tool there is like a selection. And if I happen to touch a shape, boom, that selects it. So notice that I didn't have to completely cover a shape. People seem to think they need to do that. As long as I click and touch any little bit of it, that selects that shape, right? So say that I go over here and just cast a little box right there over those two, and I've selected both of those, right? If I just do like this, I've selected that oval and that bottom one, and then I'm moving just those two. So the easiest way to select everything could also be just do something like that, and everything, and as long as you select these bits, all three are selected. Okay, so practice selecting a bunch of different things with the black arrow tool, moving one at a time, selecting one at a time, just touching a little bit. And then once you select it, then you can do stuff with it. And there you go. So now that we have the basics of shape making and moving and zooming in and out, remember, zoom in with the Command plus and then hold down your space bar to scooch your way around to the other shapes. Okay. And then Command 0 to go back out. Let's save this file. And let's take our first break. So let's go to File, Save. Now, for those of you who have your own computers at home, your own applications, you save wherever you want to save. We're going to be downloading some class files later, and they'll end up in your downloads folder unless you move them to documents. So go ahead and make yourself a folder wherever you feel like putting a folder and saving your class stuff. That's up to you. But for people on VDI, okay, so in particular, Saul and Lyric, and I believe, Vera, you ended up getting your own application. We're going to have to go to Google Drive. So over here on the top left, okay, so first do a file save, and then click Google Drive. And in Google Drive, under shared drives, you're going to have the files I'm going to give you, but for you, to save your own stuff, you need to go to My Drive. You can't save it on any part of this computer because this is your school computer and it'll disappear if you save it in documents or in the desktop or anything like that, or in My Pictures. So you need to go into Google Drive Then you have to go into my drive. So double click my drive. And then over here, you probably have nothing unless you have stuff that you've used before. We're going to create a new folder, and call this one Illustrator class files. And I'm going to call mine Summer 2. If you've only been in this class, you don't need to call it that, but I just want to separate it from other class files. Illustrator class Summer 2. And over here, we can open that one. And then down here, we're going to give it a file name. So we can just call it first shapes. And we're going to save that file. It'll ask you to Illustrator compatible for anything lower than that and whatnot, and you'll say, yep, that's fine. So just say okay. Actually, we are in Illustrator 2021, and yet it says Illustrator 2020. It goes to it depends on what version you're in, what it'll say here. All you want is make sure that it's as compatible as it can be. So if you choose it to be compatible with some of the old ones, that kind of works only if you're going to be working with someone who has an older version. So say that I send this file to someone who only has Illustrator, CS6, they won't be able to open it. So if you're sending it to someone else, you need to care about this. But if it's just for you, forget about it. Just don't do anything, don't change anything, and just say okay, which is what we're going to do with the class files. We're going to always say okay and not worry about the versions. And so up here, you should see the file name now. It should say firstshapes.ai. AI is the extension for Adobe Illustrator. And so we're set, we're ready to go. Unless you have any questions about the saving process, please let me know. Did everyone who's on VDI, Lyric and Saul and everyone who's on VDI, did you manage to save the file to the right spot? In particular, Lyric probably is the first time you've used VDI to save onto Google. Did that work for you? Do you have a question about it?
I think so.
You think so? You sure? You think so? Because the first time you save to the drive, it's not that easy. So I'm happy to show it you again or have you share your screen. All right, so we're going to take a 15-minute break. Ouch. All right, so it's 10:35. So we're going to be break until 10:50 a.m. I was going to put in the chat the time to be back so that you can keep an eye on that. All right, so then I'm going to mute everyone so that you can make all the noise you want, but you don't need to sign out. Just leave it connected and I'll see you in 15. Okay. All right, so there's still a minute to go, but I'm speaking up to, in case you can hear me there in the background somewhere, know to start heading back towards the computer. We're about to get going again. When you show up, give me a little yes, a little smiley face, a little something to know you're there if you're not turning on your cameras, which by the way, I have to say that if you can turn on your cameras, like you're in a situation where it's fine, please do so. It really makes so much of a difference to me to see real faces versus, you know, square boxes. But I understand that some of you guys are, you know, you have stuff going around, kids playing in the background, or things happening. Then please don't bother. Okay. So it's now 10:50. So if you're still out there having a snack or resting your brain, please come on back and show me some signs of life. Okay, hi Lyric, I see you're there. All right. Okay, so Shayna's there, Sal's there, Vera should be heading back at some point. All right. Let's go ahead and move forward. First of all, let me go back to the Padlet, make sure everyone's been able to post. Okay, so in the Padlet, let me share my Padlet. Let me share my screen so you can see the Padlet. Someone over here has posted, but it says anonymous. So I don't know who posted it. So can you go back in, whoever did this, and you can see that you can go over here and edit it and open it up and then write again your name and then just say update, and then that'll tell me who posted that. Okay. All right. Everyone else seems to be here, so that's cool. Heading back to Illustrator. All right, so you might have noticed, by the way, that actually, let me head back to Illustrator, that over here, what this person, which I don't know who it is saying is scale, shear, and distort objects with the direct selection tool. So these are just different deformations, if you want, or reformations of the shape. There's some other stuff that we can do that's fun. Let's go ahead and first of all, learn how to handle our application artboards a little bit better. So right now I did a command minus, control minus for PC or Mac people on a PC so that I can see my artboard a bit better. And you might notice that there's this gray stuff out here. That's called the pasteboard, and it has a place, like I can actually put stuff on the pasteboard. So it's not like things disappear, which again, if you're accustomed to Photoshop, anything outside of the canvas, it's called in Photoshop, disappears, but not in Illustrator, not in InDesign, and the other programs, it stays there. Now, this is a vector program, very different from a raster or pixel-based program. But the whole point is that you might be wondering, well, do I like this shape more than that one? So you might have some things sitting there in the pasteboard for you to decide if you're going to use or not. But just so you know, anything that hangs out in the pasteboard, if I were to print this page, this would not print. Only things that are on an artboard would print. Okay, so this is a great way, you know, like you're putting together a collage and you have some material over here, some material over there, and yet the only thing that matters is what's in the pasteboard, in the artboard, I'm sorry. So how do you make more artboards if you want? Well, a couple different ways. There's I really don't like the way the properties panel makes you do it because it's kind of roundabout, but I'll show you that. First of all, nothing has to be selected. If something is selected here in the properties panel, you don't see it, and that's why I don't like it. You need to remember to deselect. So click on the white area so nothing is selected. In that case, over here at the top, you see it says document in inches, artboard 1, edit artboard. So I'm going to show you this way first, but the rule is nothing can be selected for this to work. You hit edit artboards. And then the artboard turns into something that is selected with its own bounding box. At this point, you can either make an artboard by just clicking this little plus sign that's next to artboard 1. Click, and then another artboard appears. So that's 2 artboards. And then if you're done, you hit this little exit over there and boom. So that's the way to do it with the panel. So hopefully we all have 2 artboards now. I'm going to clean your feedback from having showed up. Now, that's kind of complicated, and I don't really like to make my artboards that way. It works, but I prefer to do it a different way. Even if you have something selected, right? So it's a bit less complicated. You can go to the artboard tool, which is way down here. And the artboard tool has not such a quick shortcut. It's, if you hover over it, see that it says Shift+O. Anyway, so say that you forget, because we're not making artboards all the time. Say you forget the shortcut, you can just go to this tool, which is the artboard tool. And then immediately you're in artboard mode. So now you can, again, head over here and click on the plus for another artboard. That's one option. Or, and you can select each artboard. You can also draw another artboard. Notice that when my mouse is out here on the pasteboard area, it looks a bit like that shape. I always call it like a little diving fish or something. And I can just click and drag and create another artboard of whatever size and shape I want. So just so you know, when you're in this artboard tool mode, you can modify the size of your artboards by using, the bounding box to modify it. And you can have a small artboard and a big artboard and a medium artboard, and can't be round, they have to be square, but they can be different sized artboards. Now, for the most part, why, and you click and select it and then modify it. Now, why would I want different artboards? Well, it depends on, maybe you're working on, for the same job, let's say, you have a logo and you have stationery and you have a business card. So then you have one file with different products on different sized artboards. That was one example of why you might want different sized pages, so to say, which are the artboards in each one. Or not, but anyway, this is one example of how you can modify your pages. Now be careful, because when you have this tool and you just kind of click anywhere, you might not notice, but you might have left a couple little artboards just hanging there just because you had this tool in your hand. So that is still an artboard, okay? So if you click away from it, suddenly you don't see it, but if you see a little number there, you've made a mini little artboard there. So select it again and then hit the delete key to get rid of it. So if you don't want this third artboard, you just, as long as you select it, you can get rid of it, and then you're done with the artboard, and now you're back to just having 2 artboards. Just wanted to show you another way to make artboards, which is just with this tool. And then you're done. And then you just kind of, if you move back to your V or selection tool, you're out of artboard mode. So you can bypass this whole properties panel just by clicking on this tool, making another one, and then hitting the V to go back to selection tool. Or if you want identical artboards, then you do hit that. You go over here, you click one more, it gives you the third artboard, and then you hit the V and you're back in regular mode. So that's the simplest way to make a new artboard right now. Okay. So now I ended up with 3 artboards, which hopefully you have ended it. When you click on them here, that gives you another artboard right next to this one. When you make your own, you can make it wherever you want in the pasteboard. All right, so hopefully you all have about 3 artboards now. Let's do Control Plus and let's go into our second one. And if you need to hold down the space bar to scooch to the second artboard, let's put ourselves in that second artboard. Any questions, please let me know. Other than that, I'll keep moving forward. So now let's go ahead and click and hold on all these shapes. And notice that there's more shapes in this basic rectangle and ellipse. There's a couple of funky tools if you have a different, like if you're in a different workspace, there's a couple of other funky tools here. But in the Basically Essential Panels tool, they've given us 4 closed shapes, rectangle, ellipse, polygon, and star, and 1 open shape, which is a line segment tool. Let's go to the star tool. I'm going to show you some fun stuff with the star tool. I'm going to choose my fill and my stroke first. So I'm going to go with a yellow fill this time. And this time I'm going to go with a thin stroke. Okay, so I only want a 1 point stroke, or even you can have a thinner stroke. You can have like a 1/2 point stroke. See down here. So these are called, this is called the hairline stroke. It's barely visible, but it's more than nothing. And then I'm going to go with a, I don't know, a green stroke to my yellow, whatever. So there you go. That's what I'm going to do next. As you can see, we're only using the colors given to us by the basic set, the basic set of strokes. We're going to learn more about color and all that next, and you know, not today, but in the future. But now I have the star tool, and the way this star tool is going to work is the same as going to with the polygon and stuff like that. There's ways you can modify the shape you make. So the first star that I make when I pull and drag is a basic star. Okay, that's the star that I make. Now, the way you use this tool is before you, once you let go, that's it. That's the star that you have. And the only options are with the white selection tool to modify, the black, sorry, selection tool to modify shape and height, which in a star looks kind of weird, or the white selection tool, which allows you to then, oh, I forgot one really important thing. I'll teach you with this. I forgot to show you something about the selection tool. Go back, you have a basic star, right? So with that basic star, when you hit, let's head back to this rectangle. I forgot to show something. You probably have a rectangle here. First, I want to show you is I want to make a copy. I want us all to have a basic set of what we have, but I want to make a copy. And what's the quickest way to copy something in all of the Adobe programs, not just in this one? I mean, everyone knows about copy paste, which is fine. You can use copy paste if that's, you know how to do it. But in the Adobe programs, there's a much easier way to do a quick copy, which is you hold the thing you want to copy. You hold down the Alt or Option key, Alt for the PC and Option for the Mac, or just, and then you just drag and you've made a copy and you put it wherever you want. So again, if this is what I want to copy, I select it, hold down the Alt key, and you see how my arrow turns into like, my mouse turns into like a little double-headed arrow. You know you're on the right place, you pull it out, and there you go, you have your copy. Okay. So I want everyone to have a copy made of one of their rectangles. And the reason I want you to do that is because I did forget to show one more thing on the basic rectangle, which is these little circular widget thingies that are on the little corners. They don't show up when your thing is not selected. As soon as you select it, they're there. So if I were to grab one of these guys right now and just click and drag, I could turn all my tips into curves. Okay, now if I don't want that, I can click and pull it back out and I get my little sharp tips again. So when I click and select just one of them, like I click again one more time, see how now this one went blue and the rest stayed white. Now I can grab only one of them. And I can go over here and grab only this one, click and pull in, and then I can choose what I want to do with these little corners to make them operate them differently. Okay, so when you want to click on only one, you need to re-click on it one more time, and then you can do something on your own. And same with the white selection tool. If you have your white selection tool and you click on a shape that originally was made out of square lines, then you can use those little widgets. Now, notice that in curves, there is no such thing because this only appears on the sharp corners. Okay. All right, so now let's head back to this star. Now this has a lot of sharp corners. And when you select it with the bounding box, that's it. You don't see those little circles or shapes at all, but as opposed to the rectangles. But if you select it with the white selection tool and click on this arrow, then notice that you do have a little circular thing at each one of these edges. So I can click and make them all, you know, work at the same time and make a little flower out of it. Or I can click and then click again. And then now I can move only one at a time. So I can do that to the tip, and then I click again and I do it into this tip and I move only that in. or I click and I make this shape change. So always with all these white selection tool, you can modify things to your heart's content. But now I want to add a tip or something to this star to make it have more tips. And it's going to be really hard because I'd have to move everything in equal direction to add one more. The whole thing will distort. So how do I make my star be different from the beginning? Well, first of all, I want to teach you one more thing. When you have something that you've done that you don't like or you don't want anymore, the first thing you should do is not try to fix it. Like if I try to, the only thing that works with these widgets is I could make a little tip again. But in general, it's much easier to undo the last few things you've done than it is to fix anything. So the next shortcut you need to learn and know by heart is the undo. So right now I want to make this look like a star again. So I can do, for the Mac people, it's the command, and for PC or VDI people, it's the control. Hold down the control and then tap the letter Z for zebra. And I'm going to tap it one time and another time and another time. And each time I tap it, something is undoing itself until I get back to my original star. Okay, so you want to tap Z, 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 Z enough times to get your original shape back. Now, if you tapped one too many and you undid something else that you don't want, the undo is always up here, but a lot of people just to go all the way there to hit undo each time is crazy. That's why you need to learn it, which is Control Z. But if you ever want to redo because you maybe tapped one time too many, then you go Shift Control Z and that redoes the last thing. So if I were now to go Shift Control Z, then I get back the last thing. Now, the Shift Control Z is a little bit weird because it doesn't always work. And that has to do with whether you have interrupted the process. Like if you have, like I did, where I clicked on something else, I can do Control Z and Shift Control Z all I want and nothing works. So be careful with the history. It's not always there. Is this moment you click your mouse to do something else, you lose that history and you can't redo it. Anyway, it's a little bit more, you'll figure out on your own when you start doing undos. If you do an undo one too many, immediately you do a Shift Control Z, then it redoes. But once you start doing something else, there's no more redos available. All right, so here we have our good old star. I'm going to back out. If I pull out this star, the same star will start happening, except for if I don't let go, I can make it bigger or smaller or twirl it, right? So this is the time to make it change position or size right when you're making it, because once you let go, that's the star you're stuck with. Now, what else can I do when I'm making it? Remember, we're clicking and dragging. So now let's click and drag and make another star. Before we let go though, watch for a second what I'm going to do before doing it. I'm going to use, so I haven't let go. See how it's still flexible and my mouse button is still down. Now I go down to my keyboard where I see the up, down, right, left arrow keys. And I'm going to hit the up arrow key. And each time I hit the up, I add a tip. Up, I add another tip. Up, I add another tip. Up, I add another tip. So I'm adding tips if I want, and I can add a ton of tips or take them away. Down arrow key, down, 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 down. I take them away. And as long as I'm hitting my mouse, I can keep taking them away until I'm down to just a triangle. Okay. Now I'm going to leave a triangle as this example. Remember, I'm going to hold down the, here's a perfect example of another shortcut that's really useful. If I now were to hold down want to move this guy, right? I can't, because right now I'm making stars. And if I try to grab it to move it, all I'm going to do is make another shape, right? So how do you move things around when you're trying to use one of these other tools? You need to go back to the V or arrow tool, the black arrow tool, but there's a shortcut to pick up that. I can hold down the Command or Control key, which temporarily gives me an arrow. I move this out of the way. I move this out of the way. I do whatever I need to do. And I'm going to delete this one. And now I'm still in my star tool and I can make more stars. So that's the shortcut that really helps you in Illustrator, to have that quick Command or Control key while you are in another tool. to just manipulate stuff. So I'm going to hold down Command Control key, move this out of the way, move this here. And now I have space again, but my mouse is still on star making mode. Does that make sense? So that's a really good shortcut to learn. Command for the PC, Control for PC, when you're in a different tool, gives you a temporary arrow tool. All right, so now I'm going to make another star, and lo and behold, the shape comes out the way the last one that you made. So since the last thing I made was a triangle, it gives me another triangle. So I need to go back and now add more tips to it to make a star. So now I'm going to add a bunch of tips to make a very multi-tipped star, and that's the next star that I've made. Hold down my controller command key, move it out of the way a little bit. And I'm going to pull another one out here. And now I'm going to make it have tie, kind of keep and hold down. Be careful. At some point, stop, because if not, it really does get to the point that you have so many thousands that it's hard to come back. Okay, so that's a multi-tipped star. Now watch, since I did put a little stroke on it, it has that little tiny edge of green, but it was a very thin green stroke. The reason I don't want to put big strokes on stars, say that I do give this like a 5-point stroke. I'm going to zoom in so you can see. The tip in this case are so thin, the stroke covers the whole strip. And also the tip, you can see is there, but the stroke is so fat that it kind of ends up in this little blunted shape. So it doesn't really look like a star anymore, which is a thing to consider if you're trying to get an effect out of it, but it doesn't work if you're trying to make it be like a star. So a really thin stroke, on the other hand, does get up there to have a tip, or no stroke whatsoever is another option. And then you have your perfect tips, right? But as soon as you put a stroke, you got to be careful to not have it be too fat. Right? So 1-point stroke already on these thin little strokes is giving you a little blunted tip. So you want a really thin stroke if you're going to be using it for stars. I'm going to go ahead and take the stroke off completely for the star. And then I'm going to show you a couple more special things you can do with stars. By the way, let me just quickly show you the polygon tool, which exact same thing. When it first comes out, it has 6 sides, but if I go and go plus, 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 I add more sides to it, less, 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 I take away sides until I'm left also with a triangle. So there you go. Just I'm not going to spend much more time, but that's the polygon shape. You can also add or take away, just like we did to the stars. Now let's go back to the star, because with the star, you can do one more set of things, which is really fun. Now I'm going to change my fill just for the fun of it. I'm going to give you a blue fill this time. Watch, I'm going to pull out my star, and what happens is it's the same star that I had before. By the way, if I want to move, see how I can make it bigger or smaller, but it's still in that same position. And if I want to move it to the center of my page, while I'm making a shape, I can hold the space bar, which kind of disconnects it, and then I can keep making it here. So I'm going to move it over here, somewhere into the middle. I'm going to pull out this thing and I go, well, this is fine, but how do I make that center point bigger or smaller so that it has like a tiny center with strips? Like, why am I stuck with the same size of my center right now? Gets bigger or smaller with the whole star getting bigger or smaller. Well, that is another set of keys. So right now I am holding down my control or command key, and I can make my tips get much longer, okay, or much shorter. So I can make a little blunt star, and I'm going to let go right now. So I've made little tiny tips to my star. Another thing I can do is, now when I pull out the star, it'll be the same blunt tipped star. Okay, so now I'm going to take and put less tips on it. So I'm going to take some tips off with my bottom arrow key. But what if I want the tips to be long again? Well, I can make my shape tiny. So I'm going to make the center of my hole tiny. And then I'm going to hold down that control or command key and make really long tips. So I can make my center tiny and then pull down the control or command key and pull out really long tips. And so now I have this really long kind of spidery, you know what it makes me think of those spiders in the house that have long legs, Eddie long legs or whatever. There's a little long-legged spider, so to say. Sun, or a little, hey, you won $10 prize kind of star over here. And all made with the same tool. Pretty cool. Let me know if you need more help figuring out the,
Deanna, I
mhm.
started to pull out the spokes and only got 3 done. How did you get all of them? I missed that step.
When you see 3 spokes.
Well, yeah, I was trying to do it by hand and I was able to only pull out 3 spokes out of my star.
Okay, so I think you're probably using the A or selection tool, which is not what I need. So go ahead and share your screen. And when you do it, I'll see what you're doing and I'll give you a hand. Everything I just showed you is in the process of creation. Yeah, I was right. You're trying to pull them out after it's been created, and that's not how it's going to work. So go ahead and get rid of this one. Just hit the delete key. The sample, that the work that I'm showing you right now is in the middle of making the star before you let go. So go find your star shape. Okay, now start pulling your star out and do not let go of your mouse. Okay, and now hold down your control. What are you on, a Mac or PC?
Mac.
Mac. Okay, so hold down your command key. You haven't let go yet of your mouse. Hold down your command key and now keep pulling. And see how your stars get longer? Now let go of your command key, not your mouse, ever your mouse. And now pull your star in to make it a little bit smaller so it fits again in the paper. Okay, and now go and don't let go of your mouse. Go to your arrow keys and start going plus. Oh, you let go.
Oh, okay.
See, the moment you let go, that's the star you're set with. You can't pull out another one. So now let that one be, pull a new one out. Yeah. And now go to your arrow keys and go plus, 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 plus to add more tips to it. This reminds me of those mosquitoes that sit on water, the big one you make.
So
right.
Here's where you can pull it out.
When you're still making it, you can pull it out. You can add more, you can take away. But once you're done and you let go of your mouse, that's the set shape. Then anything you modify now with the white arrow key is fine, but it won't be all symmetrical and perfect. Like, if you know what I mean? Now you could want some of these points to be bigger or smaller, in which case you need to finish the star first, let go, and then grab your white arrow tool and make some shorter, some longer, some tips different. But you can't do it to all of them unless you're in this actual creation mode.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. You're welcome.
Yes.
All right. Anyone else who has any questions? Have y'all managed to make a whole variety of stars? This would be a good time to ask or share your screen. Cool. So just so I don't have to call everyone by name, if you've done it, see how Shayna gave me a little thumbs up. Cool. That's a good thumbs up. So Lyric, Saul, if all of this is working for you, Vera, please give me a thumbs up. I know that this is a place where people tend to have questions about how did you make it bigger or smaller. So one last thing is that, say that I'm going to make this one. This is the last one I made, right? So when I pull this out, that's the one that's going to come. But I really want a big fat center again. So this is the one that's a little bit more Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much, Peggy, for keeping me honest. All right. So here, if I make a new one, the last one I made is that little spidery one. So if I try to make a new one, that's what's going to come out. So how do I make it go back to being a fat center? This one's a little bit harder because once you have a tiny center, the only way to do it is you need to make your star be smaller, right? Now hold your control key, like hold your, I'm getting confused with the macro PC. Controller command key, it doesn't matter which. Hold it down to make your tips really tiny again. then let go, and then pull out to make the shape bigger. And so the shape, because it gets bigger, the center becomes fatter. Okay, so then hold down the control key again to make short arrows, and then pull out again, and then you get yourself changing the center point. Okay, so now I want it to be somewhere in the middle. I want it to be about yay big, and I want it to have maybe many less points, so I can hold on down to the points, and I end up with that, and I let go, and now I've got it shaped. Okay. Now, with all these stars that you guys have made, here you're making individual stars. Consider copying a few of these with that new shortcut I showed you over here and changing their colors. So I'm going to grab this one, hold down the Option or Alt key, and I've made a copy of it and put it over here. And then I'm going to put this copy of this one, Option or Alt key, and put it over here. And I'm going to make like a snowflake, like a combined set of shapes. So maybe I'm going to put this one down there too, over here. And now they're all in whatever order they appeared. And I'm kind of so bring at least 3 stars over of the stars that you made. I'm going to bring these 3 over. And what I want to do is change their colors, change their stuff, and center them. And the way that gives me a more fun set of stars. But right now I would like my yellow one to be in front, and it's not. So how do I make my yellow one be in front of the blue one? Because that yellow one is the first one that I made. Or maybe I want the blue one to be in the back. So what would be the best way to alter the order of these things? Best or only way? I mean, you could go and say send to front, send to back. Some of you guys know that from other things, but it's a waste of time. Go to layers, find your shapes, which are up here, the top shapes that we've been making, and you'll see which one is selected right here because it's got that little box. So I'm going to go ahead and put it underneath the others. So how do I do that? Not from the box, but from just this area of gray. I can drag it and pull it down, and I can pull it down to the bottom of where the other stars are. And there it is. Now it's gone to the bottom. And now this blue one is in the front. Maybe one thing I can do is eyeball it, but it's really hard to see if these are really working, especially with this one in the way. I can eyeball centering them and try to make it work. Or I can use a tool to center them for me. So once you've moved these around in position so that they're in the right position that you want them, you can select them all. And so this is all with my move tool, right? I can click and drag to grab all of them. And now back in my properties panel, notice that I have the choices to align them. And what I want to do is I want to align them centered vertical and centered horizontal. So I'm going to click on these little icons. You can see it kind of gives you, if not, you can hover in it, it tells you. But if you can also see a line there. So I'm going to align horizontal center, and I'm going to align vertical center. And now by clicking both of those, I know that these 3 are perfectly aligned. I'll click away, and there's what I ended up with. Okay. Now you can play around and make different shapes. I just happened to grab 3, and that's what I got. You can give them different colors. Now let's go ahead and say, I want to move it. So you want to grab it and move it, and boom, what happens? One moves and the rest don't. So I'm going to Control Command Z. And what I want to do is when you consider a star is finished, I want you guys to group them. Okay. So once you have aligned your 3, go ahead and select it. And then you can group them. Now, again, as long as you have 3 things selected, a choice for grouping appears over here, which hadn't appeared there before. And I had only one thing, it was not there. I have 1 star, there's nothing to group. But the moment I select all 3, the group choice appears. Now, this panel, if you're getting accustomed to it, that's great. I also know that there's things you can do without the panel and that you do a lot. We group things a lot. So grouping should be one of those that maybe you want to begin to remember the shortcut because it's relatively simple. It's Command or Control G for group. Or up here in object, you can see that it says group, and there it is, Control or Command G. So I'm going to group that shape. Now, once it's grouped, the group work has disappeared, and all you can do is ungroup it again. I'm not going to ungroup it. I'm going to click away, and now when I select it, it moves as if it were in one shape. When it moves as if it were one shape, I can also modify it, like before with the bounding box, I'm going to undo that because I don't want to lose that symmetry. So in order to modify it, make it small without losing the symmetry, I have to hold down the shift key, and then I can make it small as if it were all one thing, or make it and then pull out another control and command or alt or option and drag out a copy. And now this one I can make bigger, and this one I can change colors, etc., etc. So notice that when you have a single thing over here, it tells me that it's yellow. When I select this one, it tells me that it's yellow with a green stroke. But when I select a group, the question goes into question mark mode because there's more than one fill in here. And if you only have one fill, this won't happen to you. But if I have a yellow and a blue, it doesn't know what to say. So it goes into question mark mode. If it's a group and I say, oh, let me change the group shape color to brown, something totally different that I don't have, or let's see, red, the entire group changes. So I wasn't able to subtly change one or the other, rather the whole thing turned red. The only reason you can see that this is more than one star underneath is because I actually had some strokes that stayed, but see how everything got filled versus before I had, and I'm doing Command Z to show you, before I had blue and yellow and green and in the stroke, but by selecting the group now, I don't need to reselect everything. If it's a group, I can just click. And then when I change a color, everything will change into that color. And if I change a stroke, all the strokes, say I'm going to give it a purple stroke, all the strokes change at the same time. So when you're working on a group, right now, we're going to work on how to modify group elements individually. But right now, a group element is going to, by default, change all at the same time. So go ahead and give me a couple of star options, maybe with the stars that you've made already, or maybe make your own stars again. And let's make some stars that could be, I don't know, Christmas ornaments. Or now, one last thing about creating shapes. When you create a shape and you want it to begin from the center, see how when I pull this star, it kind of doesn't begin from the center. Same with, I'm going to delete that. Same with my click and hold my circle. It pulls kind of from a corner, right? So if there's any reason that you're trying to make it be right in the middle, like you might want to start already in the center to make any of these shapes, you have to hold down the option key. And when you make that circle, it'll pull out from its center point, right? So say that I want to make a star, it's the same thing. If I put my mouse, let me choose a different fill. If I put my mouse in the middle of this star, when the pink guide there tells me that I'm in the center, and I hold my option key and I pull out my star, then it's going to pull out from that middle point. And it looks like I have a little fat base of a star to start with. And that's what I've got going. But now these two are already centered because I made them centered. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull this one up here and move it behind all the yellow shapes so that I know that it's behind the initial star. And then I have that little shape going, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you hold shift and option, it'll get smaller that way. All right, I'm just showing you different versions. Let me bring one more of these stars over. How about this one? Hold on the option key and drag that over here. And let me make it a bit smaller. And then I'm going to select all three and center and center. And then this one, I'm going to change color to green. And I'm going to put it a little bit lower. Now, here we're kind of guessing. We have so many elements that it does become a little bit of a guessing game as to what is what. I'm going to change the color of just the red one. So I'm going to go back selecting it. But we're going to learn a bit more now how to deal with that kind of stuff. So now I made it. Yeah, I don't know about yellow and green. How about light blue? All right, so I end up with this little weird shape that I'm going to group, Controller Command G. And now there's another very different kind of star or shape. Anyway, so I'm not really happy with the stars I made this time. Sometimes some really good stars show up. These are not that pretty. But anyway, here's how you make multiple shapes, so to say, out of one element, one single element, which is the star. And look at all the different shapes it gave me, the different things that I'm holding down. Make 2 or 3. I have a couple of other things that I was trying to show you. Hold on.
So Deanna, in order to reverse my real skinny star, how am I going to do that? Because now I can take and put more spokes or less spokes, but I want to make it the default star. Is there a quick way to get back to that?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. Let me show you. Hold on, let me center align these. A second, center and center, and then group them. Okay, so how do you, let me move these out of the way. And so you can return to the original just by take the strokes off, make it, it was a 5-point star, make it bigger, make it smaller. You basically do this enough times that you end up with your original one, right? But say that you're way off in the middle of nowhere, you have a weird star, this is all that comes up. How do you get to that original star? So let's go to the star tool. And well, two things you can do. The first one would be with the star tool, like I showed you before with all the tools, you can just click instead of clicking and dragging. And then what comes up is a way to do it with numbers. And so basically instead of 20 points, you write 5 points, right? And then over here, you can choose a different size of radio. Right now, mine was really tiny. Say that I want my radio to be 3 inches with, I'll just move both of these. And then I'll say, okay. And that was, I put the radius for both the same, which doesn't work. Sorry about that. So if I single click 5 points, then I might make it be radius 1 3 inches and radius 2 1 inch, for example. And I'll say, okay. And then that's kind of, so if you have an idea of numbers, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it, if I double click on the star tool, option click. No, I guess for now, that's the only way it used to be. There was a way to clear up your star tool. There's another shortcut for clearing up the tool, but I can't remember it. I thought it was double clicking on it, but it's not. So then just single click and rewriting the numbers in a way that it becomes a logical star instead of especially some people put 300 points and it becomes this massive points, and it's really hard to say 300 times to go back down. So this is a good way. And then, so yeah, I thought there was another way. I can't remember the other way to clean it. Sorry, I'll figure it out.
So 312.
That, yeah, well, that's just what I wrote right now and it kind of worked. Try a couple numbers and one of them is going to work better than the other. And that gives you a basic star again.
Okay. Thank you. I
You're
had
welcome.
turned off Illustrator and turned it back on. It was still there.
Yeah. Cool. Well, now what's a bit more complicated is once you have so many shapes, because by now I have a ton of shapes, right? When I go to my layers, it's kind of hard to know, where am I? Help. Things are a bit of a mess, right? Is that happening to you? You have 3 artboards now with shapes all over the place. And when you go to your layers, there's a ton of stuff. By the way, by the way, before we continue, I would appreciate if everyone now were to do a screenshot of their combined stars. Okay. The ones that you've grouped, make 2 or 3, make a screenshot and please post those stars to the Illustrator Padlet. Oh, there you go. So already posted one. Please go and give me your combo stars now that you've made, which sometimes I get some pretty ones. I have to admit, I'm not getting pretty ones this time. I keep those grouped ones there because we're going to keep learning based on those groups. So it's not over yet. But it's beginning to get complicated to do things like which is where. So here's the last one I made, and then this is a copy I made of that one, but I made that one a long time ago. So this one is showing up way down there. Now, one way to know, of course, is when you select it, which one has the blue line, right? Blue dot. So I know that this one is way up there, and this one is way down there. So it shouldn't be hard to grab this one and pull it right under there. And now I know it's underneath, and I get to put this one in front. So it's not necessarily that complicated, but you could end up having thousands of these. So one of the reasons we use groups is so that we can have elements that belong together be under one same group. So if you have made any groups yet, like this is not a group yet, right? So I still have to move one together with the other, or I have to select both to move them together. But these guys here, I did group. And each one of these groups is represented here by this little, let me zoom in a bit more. Oh, no, you can't zoom into the tools. So each one of these groups has a layer that's called a group and a little, just have a name, a little arrow icon. There's not an arrow icon, I don't know what these things are called, which tells me it's been collapsed. So this group, if I open this little guy there, I end up seeing that it's made by more stuff. So this group, it's got those 3 stars in it, and this group, it's got those 3 stars in it. Okay, so if I was looking for these individual stars and clicked on this one, I get an error, a little blue line telling me that's that one. But if I want to work with individual bits of it, so say that I want to work with just the yellow portion of it to turn it another color, or the blue portion, I can open it up and then say that I only select the yellow one. So I click in here to select the yellow one. Now I can go to let me go bigger so you can see. If I'm only selecting the yellow one, and I did it by opening the group, it would have been hard to know which one of these were that. All of those are the yellow one, but because I know it's in this group, that's the only yellow one. Now I can go in here into properties and change the color of just the yellow one to say bright pink, right? Or another tone of purple or something like that. Let me leave it yellow so we can see it better, just because I'm trying to show you the differences. Or I can decide that I want to get rid of the stroke in one of these. And so I'll go to the stroke and get rid of it. But right now it got rid of it everywhere because I was selecting the entire group. My intention was not to get rid of it everywhere. I only wanted to get rid of it of the big one. So I go into layers and I select just the big one. That one, the one that has the thin stars. And then I go to properties and I can take the stroke off of just that one. Does that make sense, you guys? Like you get to choose which one of these is going to be the one that you're going to select by using the layers. Otherwise, in a group, everything changes at the same time. Okay, so did that work? Go ahead and grab your groups. Here's another group. And this group I had made into 2 separate groups. So I'm just going to separate them. Grab your groups first and move things around. So within this little group, I'm going to shift things around. So this is the group that I'm targeting. I'm going to grab the blue and put it under the red, and then I'm going to put the green and put it above the yellow. So I'm moving things around here inside this group, and then I'm going to grab the red and put it on top of everything. All right. So I know the colors aren't that pretty, but I'm trying to make colors that are very easy for us to see what is what, right? Because I can totally separate them because of color. If I made them all purple, it might be harder to know. So then all I have left is just selecting and seeing what shape got selected in the background. Okay, so now I'm going to grab that one and make this one be a different tone of green. Oh, it's the same green, different tone of green. Okay. So did that work for everyone? You worked on your layers. So what I would like to see now in the screenshot, I would like to see you showing me some of your groups, expanded groups that are part, these stars are part of. So the screenshot that I'd like is command in the Mac command Shift 4. And then when you do that screenshot, you show me also the groups that made that screenshot. Now, if your group's all over the place, you can also grab each group. Like, I'm just gonna make it smaller to understand. My groups are kind of under other stuff, so I can just put all the groups together like that. And then you can even name a group something. You can call this one the star 1, star 2, star 3, right? So I can just double click on the word group and call it star 1. And now it has the name star 1. And this one is called star 2, right? I'm going to leave the next one as just the name group so you can see that it's a group. But other than that, you can change the name of any of these things. And then the rest are not grouped. So now it's easier to isolate the ones that you want to work with because you've named them and you've grouped them and you've put them up on top or all on the bottom. Does that make sense? How to control your elements a little bit? Because you do end up with a ton of elements sometimes. And this helps you isolate them and find them and work with them. All right, go ahead and I'm going to give you the Padlet link again here, which I will email to you guys, but I'm going to show you where else you can find that Padlet link. Go ahead and post some of your spots. Yes, Shana?
Deanna,
Yep.
a question. Everybody puts their name on the anonymous section. How do I get my name in there?
Okay, so when you're making it, you hit the plus right there under subject, put your name, right? So I wrote Deanna and that works. And then
You click on the plus sign?
yeah, in order to post, you need to click on that plus sign, right? To post. So once you click on that plus sign, it turns into like a little pencil. Your post comes up. So under subject, put your name, just so I know who made it. And then you can write something about it, like someone here wrote that these were sheer distorted objects, but I don't know who made this. So whoever made this and whoever, like over here, I can see that this one is anonymous, but Lyric wrote that it's her name. But this one is anonymous and there's no name. So whoever made this, please go and, so please go and edit it. You can hover over those 3 little dots and edit, and then just add your name in there, just so we then know who, then I know who made it. No need to apologize. I'm explaining so people know how to, I don't need the apology. I just want people to learn how to do it. Like Vera just wanted to know how to do it. So there you go. Now, unless you know there's a repeat name in class, I'm happy if you just write your single name for this because I know who you are. I just need that in the recording to have your first and last name. But in the Padlet, if there's 2 Sarahs, then yeah, I need both of them to put their last name. But other than that, you know, Saul or Peggy or Lyric is enough because you are just you, and I know that you've done your work. You know what I mean? Okay, there you go, Peggy. Perfect. And Shayna. So Vera, I'm still is the only one who hasn't posted yet. But whenever you have a chance, you can do that.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I forgot. Can you remind me how to select each shape individually instead of
yeah. So it's if they are in a group, you mean?
To create a group. So I'm trying to select different shapes on top of each other.
Got it. Well, sometimes, and especially when you have these complicated ones, it's not that easy to select each one individually because there's tiny or they're big or you have something underneath. So that's why it's a bit easier to put your mouse a little bit on the neutral area with a V selection tool, the black selection tool, and then just click and drag. And as long as you touch a little bit of each, that works to select both. If you have something smaller in there, just extend it a little bit more like that, and then you'll capture whatever's in there. but be careful, not to, touch. It's harder to select just these two without touching one of these tips, right? So you might need to move it over a little bit and then select those two and stuff like that. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
you.
The part where group becomes really useful is I'm going to make a little star here. Right. And I made a little star and then I have this shape over here. So when I put one on top of the other and I click away, oh, this one happened to have a stroke. So it's easy to see, but hold on, let me take the stroke off on this one. And make it even, so here I have two shapes, but I wouldn't know because they're the same color. So if I happen to know that I put that star there, I'll discover it, but otherwise I wouldn't. Or if it's underneath, so that's when layers are really handy because then I can kind of click on something like, aha, there it was, and move it out of the way or put it underneath and stuff like that. But if I were to be trying to select those two, if I know it's there, I'm just trying to select them, just dragging like that would have gotten both. And there you go, they're both there. Okay, so now we're gonna keep working a little bit with this, but let me actually give this one a different color so that in the future I'll see it. I'll make it blue. There we go. All right. So yeah, I think there's gas of some type or another that has a star like this. Anyway. And don't forget when you're trying to make things that are definitely it's supposed to be aligned, then you should use the align thing because it's really hard to eyeball it. But these things help. It aligns centered and then it aligns upwards. And you got your centered element. Okay. So let's go ahead and I'm going to do Command Control minus. What time is it? Okay, so I'm going to have us make sure to save. If you haven't saved yet, say File and Save. It's already been created, right? It doesn't need to be recreated. All you need to do is say File, Save. And now I want us to spend a little minute doing something else. First of all, this class finishes at it finishes at 12:30, right? Because of this weird scheduling thing that they did, I have another class that starts exactly half an hour later. So I'll be teaching basically 8 hours with a half-hour break. So I beg you, normally, and those of you who've been in my classes know, I stay after class answering all kinds of questions, but it's not going to work here. So 15 minutes before the class is supposed to be over, I'm going to try to ask you, okay, is there any questions you have beyond this or above this or things like you might have posted? So here's my request. If you look at if you look here at the Illustrator Padlet, it says, please paste your homework images. So sometimes I'll be giving you some homework to do, or most of the times I'll be giving you some homework to do, or anything you want to share with the class, or this one fails to say classwork images as you're doing right now. Successes and failures are all welcome. Please post your name, otherwise it will show up as anonymous. That's all. But the whole point is successes and failures are all welcome. Why do I want that? I want you guys to try stuff with these things that I'm teaching you. I don't want you to just sit there and that all you've made is this little star. I want you to go, oh, what other shape can I make with these shapes that I've been learning? What other stuff can I do? Create something else. And the whole point is it doesn't need to be brilliant. It doesn't need to be awesome. It doesn't need to be incredible. It just needs to be you using the tools. A lot of people go, oh, well, I don't know if it's good enough. And, I'm a bit of a perfectionist myself. And so I understand that. My goal is that you play around with this stuff because you have a whole week in between. And there's a lot of learning you can do on your own just by playing with every single thing I show you in one class. It builds up. And from there, you make more and there you make more. So I want you guys to do some work. Sometimes it'll be work that you just, invent on your own. Sometimes it'll be something I'll guide you into doing. And to post it here, especially the failure. I love the successes, right? I mean, Saul, man, he's a illustrator making machine. Each time the week comes around, he's made logos and posters and files. He works like crazy and he posts them in here. And it's really good to see that, because then I can give him feedback on that the next day when we're talking. But also you might have something that didn't work and you're not sure and you post it here. And so that's what the comment would be. You go, I really tried to get this done, but it didn't work out. What would be a better way? So use this Padlet as a way to communicate with me with the work that you're doing during the week. Does that make sense? I want you to explore beyond the 6 shapes and stars that I made you do. And this is our way to communicate and the way for others to get inspired by what you're doing. Because as soon as you see, whoa, I thought all you could do was stars, and with those same shapes that she showed me, you can do this too. And you'll find, hopefully it's a small group, so there's going to be a little bit less of variety, but in a big group, there's always like 2 or 3 things that they're very simple, but are like, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way, right? So I'm not talking about complicated. It's at the level you're at. You could make things if you start playing with them, because you discover stuff that you didn't know. And that's what I want. I also want, of course, the basic stuff that we do in class. So all of that, throw it into the Padlet. The next thing I want to show you before we go back to Illustrator is how to access our class files, because that's where you can get to the class recording. Now, you guys have been here through this whole class, so you don't necessarily need to watch the class recording, but you might want to, in case when you are on your own, you go, oh, how did you do that again? I didn't write down, what was the thing I should press? So then you go to where I was explaining it and you go, oh, I got it. So this is one of the advantages of the Zoom class. When I'm in person, you don't have me there and I'm not on record. So you just have to take notes. But here you can go to the class recording, zoom up to whenever I talked about something, in the video, and then there you are. You hear me saying it all over again. But if you miss a class or if you miss a piece of the class, then you need to, because we have the recording, then you have to watch that piece that you missed. Say that you had to step out early because you had to go to the doctor. Please come and review the last half hour that you missed, or the first half hour that you missed. That way we can all move forward without having to repeat stuff that we've learned the week before. Okay, so how do you do that? Let's go to a browser, any browser, and click on the plus sign in this case, because I'm going to open a new browser page for those on VDI. So now we're not on VDI. Now I'm actually just using a browser. And let's go to the school website, so sbcc.edu, because we have to access your pipeline account. Now, I know quite a few of you know that you are already how to get the class handouts, but I want to make sure that everyone here who's new to the system knows, and check that your handouts are activated, which it should be, but just to make sure. So click on the word pipe, the P for pipeline here. Sign in to your pipeline, which mine is automatically set up, so I can just log in. And this leads you to the pipeline homepage. Now, please do this with me, because I want everyone to confirm that they have arrived to the handouts. Okay, so sometimes the handouts are there and you're in the class, but for some reason the account doesn't work, and so I just make sure that everyone here has it. So once you're in your pipeline account, you have the student tab right there. Head down to student resources and click on student resources. Right now, you should know that for some of you guys who still don't register online, this is a place where you would go to register online, change your emails, do all that kind of good stuff, see what classes you're in. But I'm interested in this side of things. Let me actually put a little color on my mouse so you can see my mouse a bit better. Here we go. I'm interested on this side of things. There's 2 things I want to show you here. One of the things I want to show you, which I'm not going to go all the way in, is this LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning gives you access to a ton of tutorials. Really good quality tutorials, bazillions of information about Illustrator and all these different applications. So if you want to follow that path to learn more in between classes or after class, please go down and that way. If you go this way, it's free. If you go on your own, linkedinlearning.com, you'll have to pay. It's like $50 a month. It's a hefty beak. But if you go in through here, then you are using a school account and it's free for you. All right, but I'm not going to have us go there right now. I just want you to do that on your own. What I want us to go is to go to Google Drive. So click on Google Drive. And over here in Google Drive, you will see, for those of you who were using VDI, for example, Lyric or Saul, if you were to go to my drive, now you should see a folder called Illustrator class files, and that's where you put the file that we just made, right? So if I were to do that, Illustrator class Summer 2, if I double click, there's what we just made. We made Illustrator file shape. So this is just for people who were doing this on VDI. But everyone else, click on shared drive, and everyone else and those people who just clicked on my drive. I just wanted to show you that my drive we went to, there it is. But shared drive is where the class files are. So click on shared drives now. And this is a folder that I put up on and I shared it with you guys. So you don't have access to change anything, but you can view and download and use these files. So you should see one box here that says Illustrator, and I have many because these are all the different classes I teach. So you should see this one here that says Illustrator shared drive. Go ahead and double click on it. And now you have, in the double click, you have the class files. Now, there's a couple different things that you need to know. First of all, it could be that you're seeing it this way. It could be that you clicked on this little icon here at some point and you're seeing it as lists instead of as icons. It's this that'll go over there that has a grid or a list. So normally by default, if you've never been here, used it, you'll see it in this mode. Now, these are all different handouts and I want you to read some of them by next week. I also want to show you a couple of important ones, like for example, my Illustrator shortcuts, which is the first one. If I double click right there, these are some of the shortcuts that we've been using. This one, if you want to download and print it, if you have a printer and have it next to you, so that when I'm not around to tell you control tree, control minus, then you can remember which ones they are. Over here, I put in the Mac, here the PC. The only big difference between Mac and PC is command or control. The rest, as you can see, is the same key. Now, when you want to, so zoom in, zoom out, command minus, command plus, 100% for Illustrator Max matters less, see everything. Duplicate would be command, and actually it's not command D. That's interesting, that changed. Oh no, because you can duplicate by saying command D or duplicate by command option drag. So actually it's not command, it's interesting, it's just option drag. I need to fix that. I will fix that. That is just that this has changed. Illustrator changed its shortcuts and I wrote this a while ago and I'm noticing that I need to review that because the duplicate now is not command and option drag, it's just option drag. So if you guys print it out, you can just cross that out for now. I need to remind myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download this. So say that I want this, I'll go over to this little arrow and download it and it'll download and I'll get a chance to edit it and put the right thing. Anyway, just let me head back. I need to move this out of the way. I have my Zoom tools in the way. Anyway, or so most of these you don't need to download, but that's a good one to have, you know, near your keyboard for when I'm not around calling out the shortcuts. Another one is if you ever choose to purchase this stuff. So at this point, Saul or Lyric, anyone who's in VDI, know that in order to purchase this for the cheap price that I told you, do not go through Adobe, go through collegebuys.org. And here I have a little printout of what that looks like. And it's collegebuys.org. When you get there, you have to prove that you're a student. It asks you what city college do you go to, because it's a consortium for California city colleges, where because you're a student, it allows you to buy it. So the important thing you need to know is you need to use, if you choose to buy it, your
school email. Do not put your personal email, because then they'll go, well, no, you can't get the student price. So you need to put the full-on username at pipeline.sbc.edu. And see, you need an edu email in order to buy this and stuff in there. So once you purchase it this way, when you install it, you have to go to your school email to get the directions on how to install it. So go to your pipeline email address, and then you'll get the access code. Because it's so much cheaper. I mean, if you buy it on your own, you would have to buy it like for $50 or $60 a month. As a student, it would be $20 a month. You know, if you go through Adobe, through College Buys, it's way cheaper than any of these other options, but you end up having to jump a few more hoops. Like you need to prove you're a student, you go to college email, follow the instructions. When you install it, you need to install it saying through your pipeline account, but saying that it's a personal account. So if anyone is going to install it, I'll walk you through it. Let me know. It's not that easy, because if it's not an institutional account, it's a personal account. You do purchase it with your own credit card money. It's yours, but you're a student. And some people get confused with that, and then it ends up a little bit hard to use. Okay. It's the same student version. There's no difference between the professional version and the student version. It's the full-on version. Okay. Or you could pay $80 and get it for 12 months, or $40 for 6 months. All right. All right. So that's for people who are on VDI who decide they want to purchase it across the time. You don't need to, as you know, you can use VDI. And then the other handout that I want you guys to notice is the, I usually have it up on top because I update them regularly. But if not, these are all the files. These on top are just ones that I update regularly. So usually these two show up. The first one is the Padlet for Illustrator. So remember I told you I'll email you the Padlet code, but if you access the handouts and double click here, it'll tell you the Padlet for Illustrator Summer 2, and there's a link, and that'll tell you. And it also reminds you how to publish, right? So it's a little bit of an instruction of how to do things, but that's the link, the one that I've been giving you guys. Okay, so that'll take you there. So now you can close that window and back to the handout. So this is the one that I want to show you the most, because this will usually be hanging out in the first spot. And this is the place where you will have all the links for the class recordings. So when I'm done with the class today, as you heard me say, I go straight into another class that I'll be teaching until 5 p.m. By the way, Mac people, it's teaching people how to use their Macs in depth. No, today on Tuesdays, I teach people how to use the Photos app and the movie app, how to edit movies and photos on the Mac Photos app that's on your computer, your phones, and your iPads. So that's what I'm teaching in case anyone's interested in learning that. You can still join the class. If you want to be with me all day long on Tuesday. I do have a student who's not here today, Linda, who is going to be in both. Anyway, here's the thing. If you forgot how to do VDI, here's the video that records just the instructions on how to get onto VDI. Here's instructions on how to download the class files. Here's how to access the shared drive. But to access these, you need to be here, right? So these are links that you need to be here. And then over here, I'll have a link equivalent to these that's going to appear here. When you click on it, it's going to take you to the class file. Okay, so give me a second and show you what that's going to look like. So when you guys click on one of these links, right? And I'm going to just use one of these short ones as an example, but these are short links. When you click on them, it then gives you another link down here, and you click on that one, and that'll take you to the YouTube file where it'll press play, deal with the ad first, and then when the ad is done, I'll show up, right? And when I show up talking, here's the part that I need you guys to know. This one is an 18-minute video, but these class recordings are going to be 3 hours and 45 minutes long. They're going to be 4-hour-long videos, right? Because I'll post the entire thing. I get the recording and it just goes up as straight. So how you should use these 4-hour recordings is during class, like when I'm teaching something, say that you go, oh, I might want to practice this one again, or when did she say? Meh? So take a piece of notepad and write down the time, right? So say that at 11:30, I explain something that's really important, or at 9 a.m. So you know the class started at 8:45 and it's 9 a.m. You know you need to scroll 15 minutes in, and there I'll be. So you just kind of click here on the 15 minutes and there I'll be talking about that. And then you just search kind of in that area until you find where I begin to talk about that. Okay. So that's how you want to use those 4 hours. Now, if you missed the class, you got to sit through it. For better, for worse, you can scooch up. If you know that you understand it, you can scroll a bit faster. So maybe you do the 4 hours in 2 hours by scrolling through all the stuff when I'm explaining something again that you already understood. But other than that, please use those videos to completely be caught up for the next class. And if you miss a class, I still expect you to watch the video and put the work of that day in our Padlet, okay? So the point is that I want everyone to be ready to go for the following class with whatever I taught that day if you missed it, because you have the recording available. You'll have the links here by the next day, okay? So at night, tonight, I'll download the videos, download the recordings, put them up. YouTube processes the whole thing, and supposedly by tomorrow morning, they should be up there. A few times, the link might not be live until maybe the afternoon or the evening. Sometimes when they have to put on these long videos, they've had to put the closed captions before they can put them up. Sometimes it takes a bit longer, but for the most part, sometime on Wednesday, you should have the recordings of the Tuesday class available, and then you have all week to watch them. Okay. Any questions about that? Nope. Give me a thumbs up if you got it, or you're understood and you're clear, you listen. I love it because I'm getting so accustomed to thumbs up. I'm going to be teaching in class again, and I'll be everyone, okay, everyone, give me a thumbs up. And it's going to be so weird to have everyone doing that in class. I've just said it like for the last 2 years so many times. It's just going to be the way it is. All right. The last thing that we're going to do, but not today. So I'm going to ask you to do it probably before Friday, but I'll email you about it if they're ready. Otherwise, we'll just do it in class. Is I want you guys who are not on VDI, meaning everyone who has their own subscriptions, I want you to download class files. But right now, this that says download, I don't have them refreshed since I finished teaching the other Illustrator class last Friday. These are still last Friday's class files. I still need to put some fresh ones in here because I like to have different stuff in there for the people who do the class again to not get too bored. So I haven't refreshed these. So before next week, I will refresh them, and then we'll download class files so we can have some material there to work with when we need to move when we start with things that are already created. A lot of the stuff in Illustrator we create ourselves actually, so there's not that many, but I want you to know that. And then I do want you guys to read this. There's for those of you who are wondering, and again, I teach the digital design techniques class where I combine all Illustrator, InDesign, all Photoshop, all these things together, Bridge. So people sometimes want to know the difference. So if that's something you really want to understand between raster files and vector files, the differences between, this is a good one to read. You don't have to read this one if you don't want to. The main one that I want you to read is the graphic file types. There's a lot of information about different graphic file types when we start working with what we can or not use inside of Illustrator. That's a good one to read. Okay, so that's it for what I want you to do with the class files, is know how to get to the recordings, know how to get to the Padlet. And next week, once we download the files, we'll be set. All right. Let's head back into Illustrator if there's no questions. I want to show you now, we're going to stay in this file. As you can see, it's 12:08, so we have a little bit of time left to do class still. But remember, if you have any question about anything, ask me, because at 12:30, Okay, which for some of you guys is the most normal thing, 12:30 class is over, but a lot of times people ask me questions that they start asking me when I say class is over, and I'm fine. I stay and I hang out and I help, but it's not going to happen this time. If you have a question after 12:30, I'm like, I'm out of here. So please ask your questions ahead of time. I'm happy to answer, especially if it's personal projects or something like that. Oh, one more thing. Shayna, I know that you said that you had done some stuff in Illustrator before for your design class. If you want to post something to show us something that you've been doing in the Padlet here, that would be great. Like Saul, he does all these things on the side and he posts them. It really helps people see what else is available and possible and get inspired. So please, I would love and appreciate if you can share some stuff. Liz also does that too. She started knowing nothing. Liz has taken my class a bunch of times, all my different design classes. She started knowing nothing, and now she works as a designer based on all the stuff that she's been learning. So sometimes she'll post things she's working on, and that's really good too. All right. Now, which is why Liz is kind of listening in right now. She pays attention while she works, and when there's new stuff, she learns new stuff, but she's less involved daily because she basically today's stuff, she knows it all. All right. Okay, so now let's add another page and another artboard. I'm sorry. Let's add another artboard, and I'll do it. I won't walk you through it. I'll just do it. And if you guys need help because you don't remember, then ask me. Otherwise, what I'm just going to do is I'm going to head over down to the artboard tool. I'm going to click over here and just say plus, which adds another artboard. And then just by shifting back to my V or selection tool, there you go. My artboard has been added. Okay, so that's the way to add an artboard. I wanted to show you one last tool that we haven't used yet in these 4 tools is the line segment tool. And it's quite different. And what's mainly different about it in that the rest of these tools that we've been using were closed, or they're called primitive shapes. This is and they're all closed shapes. This is an open shape. So let's see how a line works. And in this case, I'm going to click and drag, and there you go. I just made a line. Now, it's a tremendously boring line, and especially in my case, it came out with a stroke like my last stroke, which is a green stroke, which is only half points. So I'm going to go ahead and make it very fat so we can see it better. I'm going to make it a 10-point stroke. So now, as you can see, when you draw a line, with the line making tool, there's other ways to draw lines, but with a line making tool, it's just a stroke on a path. So if I were to now try to grab it and change it with the black arrow tool, well, yeah, I can grab these corners and move it up and down, but there's not much to it. It's just a line. If I use the white arrow tool, again, I can grab the tips and move it up and down. There's no big difference. This is just a basic line. And the only thing it does is that when I select it, I have the chance to make it fatter or skinnier. So depending on what stroke I apply to it. Now, that said, what if I want to make a shape then that made out of a bunch of lines? So should I do that and then do this because I'm trying to make a triangle or something like that, and then do this? So I've made 3 lines, right? Which technically makes a triangle. But if I go select them, they are really not a triangle. They are just 3 individual shapes. So when you're trying to create something with just drawing lines, there's better tools out there. So consider that these don't connect on their own. Just because you put them together when you're looking from afar and they look like they're working together, they're really not. So this wouldn't be the way to make lines. Let me control minus to back out a little bit more. That said, I'm going to show you a bit at another point how to play around with lines a bit better. I'm just kind of showing you more of what can't be done right now, just because I'm trying to show you something else first, and then we'll see what the utility of actual lines might be. But it's tempting to think, oh, that's a way to play around. No, it just gives you a basic straight line. That's all it does. I'm going to go back to the rectangle tool. So I have it here. So how else would we draw something? Head down right underneath the rectangle tool. There's the paintbrush tool. When you click and hold the paintbrush, there's 3 tools here. Paintbrush. Whoops. Didn't mean to like that. There's the click and hold. Sorry, I just have my zoom tool turns into something else instead of a mouse. It drives me crazy. All right, so when you click and hold, you have the paintbrush, the blob brush, or the pencil tool. Okay, so I'm going to show you the pencil tool first. We'll have time because it's the simpler one. We'll have time to move into the other tools later. But the pencil tool is another way to draw lines. Let me just start by saying that no one ever in their life drew very well with a mouse. Have you ever tried to like sign your name with a mouse or do anything with a mouse? It's not the best thing right there. So just so you know, if you can, let me stop my share for a second and see if you can see me a bit better. I'm going to stop my share. See me. I use a pen that operates as a mouse. So it's a graphic a stylus. Okay. And if you're interested, I can share. And again, when we're in real life, there's some that we can borrow. But right now I use this as if it were a mouse, and I click and drag my mouse around and I put it on a little thing that I have next to my screen, which is a Wacom. This is a Wacom tablet. And then I can actually use this mouse much better because now I'm going to share again. Because it's actually operates like a pencil or a pen. So if you're, really trying to do some drawing and stuff in the world of Illustrator and such, you might want to consider getting a graphic tablet or a stylus. This one that I have that I've upgraded over the years just because I've had them for like 30 years. And they need a new one, but I've always bought the cheapest, smallest version, which is less than $100 from Wacom. And it's always done everything I need. There's some really fancy ones if you're going to do this as a professional illustrator, but for the most part, this is more than enough. Anyway, so let's give this, I'm going to give this a stroke. Let me give a darker color to my stroke so it's easier to see. Maybe I'll give it a burgundy-ish. And I'm going to make it 4 points just so that it's a bit easier for you guys to see it. I'm going to zoom in a bit. But with a pencil tool, I can click and drag and do some drawings. And when I let go, it was a pretty jaggedy drawing. And see how it actually seems to be better than what I originally drew. But actually, this color doesn't let us see the path. So let me go with a lighter color again. Here we go. Because I want you guys to see that path inside and the anchors. And that's why I always say anything except for blue or dark. So when I draw, again, I have a pen, so it's a bit easier. But if I draw something, see how it's kind of jaggedy? That blue line appears kind of jaggedy. But once I let go, it kind of resolves into a pretty smoothish kind of line. And that's a smooth tool thing that this tool does. Now, if I want a straight line, if I hold my shift key, I get a perfectly straight line. As long as I go up or down or 45 degrees by holding my shift key, I get absolutely straight lines. So we're doing the exact same thing we did there, but we have more variety of what we can do with it. But there's one more advantage to this, and let me get even closer. If I'm making a line curvy or straight, and I make them separately, they stay as separate lines. But if I now move my mouse, look at my tool. See how there's a little pencil with a little asterisk at the tip of it? It's kind of hard to see. That means I'm going to make a new line. But if instead of making a new line, I hover over the tip of a line that's already there, see how instead of that little asterisk under the pencil, it turns into a little like a dash or a line? That means I can click on that path and continue. And now my line continues. But I need to be clicking on that last anchor point, and then I continue my line and I continue my line. So if I were to have wanted to make that triangle that I couldn't do with the line segments before, I can hold down the shift key and make a straight line Oh, sorry, I went over a bit too much. I'll make a straight line with the shift key. Oh, sorry, I'm because of the Mac PC thing, I looked down and I click on the wrong thing. I was clicking on the command key. Okay, click on the shift key, make my straight line, click again and make another straight line, and then click again, make another straight line. And now I've got a shape made out of a pencil, but that gives me straight lines, and it's a connected shape. Now, the thing about a connected shape is that you can fill it with color. I'm going to go ahead and fill this one with a color. Versus an open shape. I'm going to zoom out, and then let me get any of these shapes. I'm going to get this line. If I fill it with a color, it'll oblige and fill itself. But what it does, the fill goes from beginning point to end point. And if it's a straight line, it doesn't fill. But if it's a kind of a shape like these, then what it'll do, it'll just kind of throw in some color in between the first and the last point, which then doesn't really work. You'll see that when you try to, in fact, look, if I go and say view transparency grid, what we did at the beginning, show transparency grid. I know it does work in this case. Let me undo. I thought it wouldn't show. So there's an in outline mode, you'll see that anyway, it isn't really a valid shape. If I try to do stuff with this fill, it doesn't operate, doesn't really respond to you the way the fill of a real closed shape works. So this is not the way ever, you can't control, first of all, where it goes, and it's not the way to fill stuff. So you shouldn't fill open shaped shapes, open, how do you call them? Open-ended shapes, let's say. You should only be filling shapes that are closed shapes. There's other ways to color things that are open-ended that we're going to work with, but so that for now is how we're going to work with the pencil. Now back to the pencil. There's some other things you can do to modify your pencil. So right now, what if I wanted this line to be more accurate to what I'm drawing? Why does it turn into that when I had a jaggedy line? You can choose how much you want. Let me change color so that the next sample you'll see it better. I'm going to go with green now. I can double click on this pencil. I'm going to do there, just double click on the pencil, and the pencil tool options appear. For most of these tools, you can double click and you have options that show up. So right now, I have my fidelity set to really smooth. I can set my fidelity down to completely just accurate, and I'll say okay. And then when I draw this jaggedy line, I'll get much more of a jaggedy line. And when I draw this line, I'll get that line. Does that make sense? It's more accurate to how I draw, which is fine, but it turns out in this case to be really not such pretty lines. But depending on the effect that you want, that's you know what you get. So you can choose by double clicking on the pencil, and maybe the best point is usually somewhere in the middle, and then you'll say okay, and then you get a bit of straightening, but not so much. All right, if everyone was able to change the accuracy of their lines, there's one more thing I want to show you, and then that'll be it for today. So find some smooth or empty area. I'm going to move a couple of these. I'm going to just delete a couple of these so I can have a bit more space to do what I want to do. So I'm getting rid of some of these, moving all these up there. So see, I'm just dragging and pushing these out of the way. So I want a bit of empty space to do the next thing. All right, I'm going to zoom in a little bit into this empty space. Now pay attention to what I'm going to do first, like watch it my sample, and then you can do this. So I'm going to draw a line, right, like that. And then when I'm done, I go, that isn't the curve I wanted. I wanted it to be a lesser angled curve. So with my mouse, I can go near to this point and then just kind of redraw from point to point, and the line redraws. Or I really wanted it to do that, and then it, oh, sorry. It's my phone reminding me to to have you guys ask your questions. So in that case, when I made it close like that, it didn't redraw it. I'm gonna do like that and redraw it. I'm gonna do like that and redraw it. So I can go from parts of the path to parts of the path and modify my pen. Now you need to be near enough. Like if I see that my point is looking like an asterisk, that means it'll draw a new line. See? But if I'm near enough to it and it needs to be active, so that one won't work anymore, then I can touch that path and redraw that path. Okay. Now, when I go to the end points like I just did, it ends up making a closed shape. And each one of these, if I go select them right now, are actually sometimes are grouped shapes. If I were to go show them layers, they'd be grouped shapes. So we'll talk about that later. So be careful with that. You can choose how near you need to be for that to work. Like there, I was not near enough. So how do I choose that? I double click. And over here, it tells you how close the paths have to be. So with the ends, so when I touch the end, how close you need to be 16 pixels near the tip. And who knows what a pixel is, right? At this point, we have no idea. So you just need to know you need to be near enough to the tip to be able to have it continue. But it has to be live. So right now, this was not live. So even though I was near the tip, it didn't continue. It needs to be selected. So once again, how great is it that if I hold down my control key, I can select really quickly a shape, and then I can make something else appear, and then that connected to that. So remember, if you need to select something quickly and you're still in your pencil tool, right? But now that's the one you want to modify. You hold down your control or your option or alt key, sorry, your control or command key, and you can then select something else because it's a temporary grabbing of your selection tool, and then you're still on your pencil. Now, if that's the one I want to modify, I hold down the command or control key, select that one, and then I need to be within 15 pixels, and see there, I'm making a new one there, I'm getting that line, I can continue that path. Double click. On the other hand, to edit the paths, I need to be within, and here it says 6 pixels, so I need to be even closer. If I make it like you really want separate paths, you can adapt what number you want for all of these. So say I leave it under 6 pixels, that's what it needs to make sure that I'm near enough to then modify this line. I need to be within 6 pixels. So that, again, you can make it more or less sensitive. Okay. For now, that's it with new tools and new shapes. Go ahead and play around with that and make some things or some drawings with that, modify things to your heart's content. Notice that when I do a closed loop like this from tip to tip, the whole thing closes itself, even though I had a really long path. So be ready with your controller command Z to go, oh, I didn't mean that, undo that, and then start again with something else. Okay, so don't forget to select your shape first and then do your modification, which then only turns the curve. But remember to be near enough to the tips or near enough to the path for it to work as a modification or as a new shape. Again, I did this all with one symbol basic stroke. There's much more to this. We're going to keep talking what you can do with those strokes, but that should give you full control of these basic tools, which you will see many times. They do form the basis of a lot of the designs and art that we're going to be doing. Is going to start with these guys. All right. So if you want to do another screenshot, and fine, it's 2 minutes to the end of class, and I specifically need to have VDI people who've never used VDI follow the following steps, because everyone else can just close and go away. You're done with your Illustrator, but on VDI, we need to back out, especially so in particular, Lyric and Saul and Grace, people who are on VDI, please do as I do right now. First of all, we're going to close our file. I just saved it. So Command S, Control S, or File Save, and then close it from here. And then we're going to close Illustrator from the top right. Now, Illustrator can be closed or not. That's not such a big deal. But what's really important is for us to get out of our Google Drive. If you don't, next week, all the files will be corrupted. So watch, go straight down to the bottom taskbar and click on this little arrow that pops up, and then choose the Google Drive icon. Click on that. When you get here, you need to go to the gears or settings tool right there and choose preferences. Do not quit right there. That won't work later. It'll be hard to open it. Just go to preferences. And then here again, go to the same gear tool and say disconnect account. That's it. We just need to disconnect account. Say yes, disconnect. So once you've disconnected, this means that at the beginning of next week, it'll ask you again, connect to Google Drive. And you want to do that. See, it says sign in now. And that's where you want to leave it. You want it to be in sign in so that you get a fresh connection to Google each time. Otherwise, next week, you'll have corrupted files. All right. Then we go down to the start icon here and we power down the school's computer, right? So you go to this little power button, press power, and then you get the options of sleep, shut down, reset. You want to shut down all apps and turn off PC. When it's done shutting down, we still need to disconnect from VDI. So these are, disconnect from Google Drive, say close, you shut down the school computer, and now you go up to the very top row of icons, click on this little guy, the last one, and you log out. So there's 3 things you need to log out from Google Drive, from the computer itself, from the desktop, and now from VDI. Once you say you're done, and then ready to go until the next time you sign in. Okay. Any questions about that, Lyric or Saul, or I don't know who else is on VDI right now? Did that all work out? Do you need some more support with that, or did you follow?
Yeah, it worked.
It worked. Okay, cool. Saul. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to stop my share and yay. I guess it's 12:31. I've never done this so quickly, but you guys are great. Sorry that I can't stay to chat. See you guys next week. Put stuff in Padlet, ask me questions that way, and I'll see you soon. Take care.
Yeah,
Have fun. Have fun with Illustrator.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.